guys will start working towards your seats. We'll get started here in just a moment.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to talk to you.
All right. You ready, Mrs. Ford?
Chairman Wingate,
Here.
Vice Chairman McClendon. Here. Dr. Highlander,
Here.
Mrs. Hill,
Here.
Mrs. Jones, Mr. Perez,
Here.
Mrs. Robinson, Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mrs. Thurman,
Here.
Ms. Tidmore. Here. Superintendent Dr. Johnson.
Here.
Okay. So I have the following requested amendments to the agenda here, if you'll take a look at those. Under item Roman numeral 11, which are board matters, have the request to add item D, which be a school security officer's resolution, and then also add item E, a discussion and possible vote on mask mandate. Also, you have on the table there should be an updated copy of the board policy 6.409 as was discussed on Monday. Do I have a motion to approve those requests?
You have those other delegates that we need to add also.
Oh, yes, sorry about that, Mr. McClendon. And then also a request to add the following folks here under delegations. That would be Miss Larissa Robinson and Mr. Justin Wilkins. All right, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Ford.
Dr. Highlander,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. McClendon,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. That brings us to our pledge to the flag and meditation by Mr. Gary King, coordinator of Harrison Bay Future Ready Center.
Hi, if you all would please stand and join me in our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So when Miss Ford told me that I was selected to do this, I thought, well, how fitting, since less than a month from now will be my last day after 39 years. So I asked her, oh, thank you. I asked her kind of what protocol, and she kind of gave me a large ballpark. So I'm going to do a little reflection. 39 years ago, I was hired after the 20-day count at Eastridge Junior High as a teacher there under Ed Woodham. I came in that morning. I was told on Friday I had the job. Came in Monday morning. He told me a lot of things, and the one thing I remember that morning was he handed me a paddle. And he told me my first period class was the behavioral disordered class from around the county and not to let them get out of line. So, sadly, I did have to use the paddle at times, but I noticed something as the year went on. I used the paddle a lot less at the end of the year than I did at the beginning of the year. Amen. And I realized to myself that as long as I engaged them and kept them interested in science, I didn't have to worry about discipline. So, different day, different time. I am proud that I've been a part of an evolution of what's called a principal leader, and that is going from what was 17 years ago when I took on my first principalship, being just a building manager, to being now what we call a leadership educational leader, but even more so important, a teacher coach. So, and I know Mr. Wingate can appreciate the coaching part of things, because you're always, as a leader, you're always coaching, you're always teaching. I'd like to share a few things I won't miss and a few things I will miss. So, first, and everybody when they go to retire, they have these things. I won't miss bright, capable students doing just enough to get by. I won't miss end of course testing, and I'm happy to say I gave my last boxes to Udawan Central today. I won't miss parents that are enabling their students to be unsuccessful because they won't get them to school. And I won't miss waking up at 5:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday. So, I will miss the first day of school, the excitement. Students come in, and also returning students as they've grown and matured. I'll miss graduation. I'll miss aha moments when you see the struggling students get it. I will miss working with great teachers. I will miss Harrison Bay and Hamilton County High School. That was a big part of my life. But I will continue to be a teacher for my 3 grandchildren and instill in their parents the importance of a good education that they were instilled from myself. So, thank you. I'd like to ask you, if you would, to join me in a quick prayer, and then we'll continue the meeting. So if you would, bow your heads. Lord God, our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity and the responsibility you give us to make a difference in lives each and every day. We know that every person that walks in our doors, you have a purpose for their life. And it's not just theirs, but it's also our responsibility to get them to that purpose. We thank you every day a bus or a car drops students off and allows them to walk through our doors, to allow us to teach them what's important. And we realize this year more than ever before the impact and opportunity we have on our society. We pray that every day begins with safety from the world around us. But we also pray that they'll come in with a craving for learning. And we hope that by the time they leave us, they still have that craving for learning. We love you, Lord. We know our children are your children. We know we're responsible for teaching them about kindness and acceptance and understanding, and most of all, love. And we just lift these prayers and thoughts to you and all that we have in here in this room. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. Amen. And thank you.
tough to follow a retiring educator. All right, so at this time, I'd like to recognize our student representative to the board, Miss Macy Tidmore. And this is Macy's last night with us. So I want to talk just a little bit about her, and I'll talk for just a second, and then Dr. Johnson, I think, has a couple things he'd like to say. Let me just give you a couple of, or a few accolades here from our very distinguished student representative. Macy has served as a member of the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council since 2018-2019, beginning as a delegate and then moving to vice president in 2019-2020, and then now president this school year. She was recently received the Hallmark Award for Distinguished Chapter Office at the National Convention for Phi Theta Kappa. She is recognized for her work as the chapter president for the campus chapter Alpha Beta Mu in her involvement in Phi Theta Kappa programs. She also has served as a legislative delegate for the Tennessee Intercollegiate State Legislature. She was a presenter at the Southern Regional Honors Conference. Also a member of Chattanooga State's Green Team, member of the Global Scholars. She took on average 2 honors classes per semester and obtained the honors distinction on her associate's degree. She also participated in community service at St. Mark's United Methodist Church, Erlanger's Summer Volunteer Program, Snack Pack Ministries, and the Tiger Cupboard at Chattanooga State. And this from her principal, Miss Sonia Rich. Macy has been an awesome asset to Collegiate High. She's energetic, motivated, charismatic, and has a charming personality. At Collegiate High, she has mentored other students and has represented our school at Preview Night. And Macy has been involved in Hamilton County Schools by serving on the Superintendent's Advisory Council, attended the Youth Leadership Summit, and the Student Congress on Policies in Education. Macy graduated yesterday, May the 12th, with an associate's degree and a high school diploma, earning honors distinction. And she plans to attend Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee. It's Macy Tidmore. Come up here, please.
Macy, got some flowers for you.
Congratulations, Macy. Thank you for serving with us. And so then our incoming student representative, Mr. Jamal Macon. Just a couple things here from his principal, Dr. Leandria Ware. Jamal is the quintessential scholar at the Howard School. During his tenure, he's always presented as an engaged, personable young man who is a quick and eager learner and cares about helping others. Not only does he display superior academic performance, but his community service and servant leadership qualities are paramount in everything that he does. He genuinely prefers a lifestyle of service and compassion exhibited by his commitment as a student ambassador of Howard's Erlanger Institute of Healthcare and Innovation. Throughout his journey, he's emphatically articulated his goals and aspirations to become a neurosurgeon and dedicates time, energy, and effort as a devoted volunteer of Erlanger Health System's Volunteer program. Additionally, on the campus of Howard High School, Jamal has also immersed himself in the community as a member of the Chick-fil-A Leadership Academy, Lookout Mountain Conservancy, the Tiger Way Leadership Academy, the Omega Lamplighters Mentorship Program, the Superintendent's Advisory Council, and a devoted member of the Howard Hustlin' Tigers Theater Department, and football, track, and wrestling teams. Based on Jamal's dedication to his academic performance, community service, and leadership attributes, there is no doubt that he will continue to excel exceedingly. So, Mr. Jamal Macon, thank you and welcome. Jamal
Joe, I
says he
hope we're
doesn't have
sitting-
anything he wants to say. We'll get that out
Hey,
of him
Joe,
later.
Joe,
Yes,
I hope
ma'am.
that we're back up on the lectern. I'd love to sit next to him so I can mentor him, you understand?
Oh, I got you.
Well,
I got you.
I was about to say how much I've enjoyed getting to be in proximity to Macy all year. Macy, charming, the word your principal used to describe you, I think is perhaps the perfect word. As I thought about your service and your leadership to Hamilton County Schools and on the COVID-19 reopening task force, words like thoughtfulness and wisdom came to mind. And charming is yet another that I would add to that list most definitely. So I thank you so much for all that you've done for our schools, for the perspectives that you bring to our board meeting. And Jamal, I look forward to working with you as well. Student voice is critical and yet often difficult for a board like ours to hear, either because it's a different idea or because, frankly, kids don't like to talk to us sometimes. So I thank you so much for all you've done, and I wish you the best at Rhodes.
All right, thank you again, Macy, for your time, and Jamal, we're looking forward to it. All right, so next here on our agenda, we'll have a presentation here about the Partnership Network. Dr. Sonia Stewart.
Hi, good evening, everyone. We are Partnership Network is joining us via PowerPoint, and Val Armstrong, their department or their chair for today will be leading the speech.
Hello. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, great. I think we have the slides up, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and just want to thank everybody for your time this evening and giving us opportunity on your agenda to be able to share from the Hamilton County Partnership Advisory Board relative to some recommendations that we have. We've been pretty busy over the last year, as always, and always want to take an opportunity to be able to share with you all, especially during this important budget time, relative to some recommendations that we have. So thank you for that opportunity. I'm going to take just a minute or so to share a little bit about the Partnership Network. So if we move to the next slide, what you'll see here, and this is just kind of sharing a bit of background on who we are. So there are several members of the Partnership Network that you see, if you'll scroll down just a little bit, that we have. It's 7 of us. And we all agreed to serve on this advisory board for the partnership schools for a 5-year period. The Partnership Network Advisory Board has a memorandum of understanding with Hamilton County Schools, as well as the Tennessee Department of Education, in regards for us to provide advice, counsel relative to the schools that are in the Partnership Network. And there are 5 schools that are in the Partnership Network that we spend a majority of our time focused on. It's Orchard Knob Elementary, Orchard Knob Middle School, Woodmore. We also have Brainerd High School, as well as Dalewood. And we've been extremely involved. And I always like to share my appreciation for the board and all of the hard work that they provide throughout the year. We represent different arenas throughout the community. And for us, it's a passion that we have in order to provide some advice, counsel, leadership for these schools that we have such a huge passion for. Over the last year, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we've not had an opportunity to visit the schools like we have in our previous 2 years. As I shared, we're 3 years into our 5-year agreement. And that hasn't stopped us. We've been on a ton of virtual calls throughout this year. We've spent a lot of time with Dr. Stewart, as well as Superintendent Johnson, Commissioner Swin, also Robin Cupp, and our new liaison for Hamilton County Schools, Jessica Birdsong. And for us, it's about just ensuring we get all the education that we need to continue to move things forward. So with that, I'm going to take a minute to go to the next slide and share and talk a bit about our partnership that we have. It is a true partnership. So if you take a flashback to 2020, there were some recommendations that the Partnership Network Advisory Board brought forward to the school board. And if you look on the left-hand side of this screen, that's a high-level summary of those recommendations. It's going to be pretty similar this year in regards to the recommendations that we're going to share. What you will see is that they are just a little bit more robust in regards to our ask and a bit more detailed as well. But I'd like to share my appreciation, as well as the appreciation of the Partnership Network, with Hamilton County Schools and Dr. Johnson, as well as Dr. Stewart, for taking those recommendations that we provided last year and truly engaging and weaving them into the school's turnaround plan. So if you look on the right-hand side of this screen, what you'll see is where they've been able to overlay and embed some of those recommendations for us. And this is where the rubber meets the road. It truly is about that partnership that we have and being able to work together collaboratively to say, how are we moving forward and impacting the schools that are in the partnership network. So I'm not going to take time to read through everything, because we're going to see when we get to the recommendations that many of them are, again, the same recommendations that we're bringing forward this year, because we feel that they're just that important. Okay, so I'll take a moment here to speak about our first 3 recommendations. We have 6 altogether, but our first 3 recommendations, the first being differentiated compensation, which is salary scale, aligns with, again, the recommendation that we had last year. A little bit more detailed, and I'll talk about that in just a second. In addition, we have our second recommendation here relative to staffing, and the third, resource allocation review. So if you scroll down, I'll move into the differentiated compensation here in regards to what we have on this this slide. A lot of words, but I'll take a moment just to talk through it. And what you see is it's pretty robust. And for us, we've spent a good deal of time in the schools talking with students when we were able to visit the schools, the focus groups that we've held with parents through the community as well as the staff. And we understand the challenges that are faced by the partnership schools. And for us, it's a matter of ensuring that there is stability there, ensuring that we have staff and positions that are filled. And with that comes a level of pay that should really commensurate the work that the staff is facing and what they're having to do on a daily basis. So this recommendation, what we're bringing forward here is in 3 bullet points. We're saying for hard to staff positions, 30% increase in base pay. For core positions in the school, those staff positions, 25% increase in base pay. And then for the additional staff, 15%. And again, that is level set with what we know are challenges that are faced throughout these schools, the tremendous amount of time, work, and effort that's placed by the staff in ensuring that the students in the schools receive all the support that they need. And for the experience that we're bringing to the table, many of us on the partnership board, we've spent time in certain roles, and from a corporate organization standpoint, different backgrounds that we've held. And ultimately what comes with that is when you're in positions that require a higher level of skill set, that require a lot more work, dedication, pay should come with that. And so this recommendation is based on that. This last bullet point that you see here is relative to professional learning and planning, and that there would be differentiated compensation opportunities for that as well for staff that's in those schools. So with that, I'll move to the next recommendation from a staffing standpoint, which was number 2 on the list. And this one is speaking specifically here about employing in the partnership network schools critical infrastructure, that critical infrastructure being personnel and positions that should be dedicated to the schools from a success standpoint, but also just to ensure that they have the resources that they need. So we've outlined those positions that we feel are critical. On this particular slide, you'll see an HR specialist, data coordinator, RTI, which is a response to intervention, as well as English as a second language specialist roles. And then we also outlined as far as community school specialists and content coaches here. Just continuing to come back to the fact that there are certain levels of roles and positions within the schools that we feel like is critical for the continued success of our students. And this second slide is a continuation from a staffing standpoint. And I'll share that this comes from a good deal of conversation that we've had throughout our time in speaking with leaders there in the district as well as within the schools and understanding some of the struggles that they have. So this first bullet point speaks to having additional staff in classrooms for kindergarten to third grade, behavioral specialists, interventionists, as well as additional guidance counselors and our social workers. Throughout the pandemic, our students have dealt with a lot that we as adults have also had challenges with in regards to just mental health and wellness and stress. Being able to have those resources are pretty critical for our students as well as for their success, and we cannot feel that they are immune to any of the challenges that we've been dealing with over the last 12 months and even more into the future to come. So we'll move and continue along. Resource allocation review. This is one that we just wanted to highlight. It's called out in our memorandum of agreement that we have, but we always like to keep it at the forefront. And it's just that, you know, there continues to be a resource allocation review and a conversation between the Tennessee Department of Education and the Hamilton County Department of Education, our Hamilton County schools. It's critical that those conversations are occurring. And we are, again, very engaged and continuing open dialogues across all lines with the state as well as with the school system here locally. And we appreciate that partnership. So we're just bringing forth the continued recommendation that we keep this agreement in place as we have it in the memorandum of agreement. Okay. So as we move on, the next three recommendations here are more of a continue to monitor. These were on the initial list from our recommendations that we provided last year, and we wanted to ensure that we didn't lose sight of those. And they center around strategic plan alignment, support, professional learning and development, as well as district plan priority review. So we'll speak quickly to that because, again, these are areas that we're just continuing to monitor. So for strategic plan supports, what you have here are just those areas of supports that we feel like are important, and they do, again, align with the strategic plans and the turnaround plans there for Hamilton County schools, but in an academic space, student readiness, educators as well, and there being a mutual agreement on principal hires and changes, which we've had some changes recently in some of our schools we're very pleased with. Continuing to elevate the leadership there. And then also from other support, and that's with us, with the partnership leadership and us continuing to build our capacity. We are not the educators and we're not the ones that are working in the school system on a day-to-day basis. So it's important for us that we continue to build our capacity and understanding of all the nuances of what's occurring throughout the school districts, particularly in our schools. And we spend a great deal of time. We meet once a month. Dr. Stewart is available and provides resources and updates to us. Becca, from just a metrics standpoint, we love Becca for all of her metrics and information that she shares with us, but it ensures that we are aligned and fully up to speed on the areas that we need to be. And then we'll move into the next slide that we have here. And this is just for purposeful professional learning. Lots of words on here, but it pretty much is summed up to say that we are focused on professional learning and development and growth opportunities for the staff that's in the schools. It's important that they are fully aligned with areas of professional leadership and development. So, you know, we want to make sure that those resources are continuously provided to them and available and accessible wherever it's necessary and aligns with their growth, learning, and their development. And then we have one last slide here. This is just the district priority plan review, which we actually review this plan every year. Again, this is just an area to continue to monitor and just being sure that we have an opportunity to review that before June the 1st. And we've not had any issues in this area either, but we always just like to keep it at the forefront. So with that, I'll take a pause. We do have some of our board members that have joined us today, so I certainly want to recognize them. We've got Dominique and Akasha and Ardina. out there. I believe I see you, and thank you all for joining us. But we'll open it up and see if there are any questions that anyone has for us.
Go ahead, Dr. Highlander.
Just for a point of clarity, on the differentiated compensation, the additional work days, planning, professional learning, that is in addition to the 15, 25, 30% base pay increase, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to check that, verify that. Do you have any idea what that will cost overall?
Oh, I don't have those numbers in front of me at the moment.
Okay.
So I'm not able to share right off the bat what that cost would be.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mrs. Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Brian, I know you guys work together throughout the year. The differentiated compensation salary scale. I've asked them to open the window just because I'm really hot. So
We can
that's
turn the
why
air.
they're doing that. We have all the fun over here, and we have a lot of body heat. Okay, so differentiated compensation salary scale. So you guys have worked on that. We have a differentiated pay plan in front of us tonight to approve. And what I recognize is that there are some differences in the requested differentiated pay versus what you all have determined with the budget this year that we are capable of providing. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, you absolutely are.
Okay.
I think the Partnership Network's goals are always aspirational to push us.
Okay.
As are the commissioners. I mean, that's why it's a partnership. And we have to come back and see what we can do, if we can do. And so,
Okay.
I think that their goals are always very aspirational.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing, like as I look at the plan that we've been asked to approve tonight, is that in a promise level school based on the level of poverty in a school, which all the partnership schools fall into, we're looking at all staff receiving up to a 20% bump in pay depending on what they teach, correct? Okay. And then principals also would be receiving an additional bump by leveling up to a different level in the principal pay plan. So we won't be able to hit that exactly. The other thing that I was thinking about is on the staffing slide. You guys make some great points about all partnership networks. Schools should be staffed to include these 4, really 5 different categories if we split guidance and social workers up. So I wonder, Dr. Johnson, if you could tell us a little bit about how the staffing plan for the district is differentiated for schools that fall into either the partnership network or one of the promise category schools. Like, how does that differ from a school that isn't facing that kind of challenge?
Yeah, so the economic disadvantage component shifts the generator for staffing a little bit, somewhat. So there is some cushion from that standpoint. And the impetus for that is to ensure that the federal dollars that these schools get, they can, use those resources to do some of these additional things. And so, again, it goes back to being a math problem, what we can afford within our general purpose budget, what we can't afford.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we're where we are.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be able to do some things with, their federal funds from the standpoint of title and the other things that are there, which is the purpose or intent. So whether it's a behavior interventionist or what have you.
So while the staffing model gives additional resources to a school that has a significant number of economically disadvantaged students, the partnership network also has additional funding by way of title funds in those schools that a principal may choose to use to staff these kind of positions in the year. Am I understanding?
Absolutely. And the other piece I think is, Sonia's done a great job of really trying to, with the partnership network's input and commissioner and state, bring some coherence across those schools as far as what they're looking at. So, you know, over the years, we worked to get tighter and tighter and tighter and help them really think about how they're using those federal dollars, because those title dollars, they develop a committee, that committee goes through the process, and there is the ability to have some autonomy, but really trying to define that autonomy around what's going to move your school forward in a really thoughtful way. So they've done a lot of work around that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Val, thank you so much for all that you do in leading this team and for the entire partnership network. You guys are fantastic. I appreciate you.
Thank you, thank you. We're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, but thank you for that. We're truly just committed and dedicated to the work that we agreed to for our 5 years, and we're looking forward to the next few years ahead.
Mr. McClendon?
Yeah, I don't know who is the right one to answer this. Talk to me a little bit about this job embedded. I'm guessing that's in job embedded teaching. Am I correct on that?
I think you're talking about professional development. So in a perfect world, what the research base shows is that the best approach, instead of a one-shot professional learning when we pull the teachers out, you know, is to really embed it into what they're doing in their day-to-day. So to have that really intensive dose where they're seeing it, they're going back in the classroom, they're implementing, they're getting to come back out, and it's kind of, you know, that push and pull. So I think that's the reference with the job embedded for professional learning, to make sure that it's targeted and intentional based on what the research showed.
Mr. Perez?
So my questions are along the line of Ms. Hill's, but in the budget we approved, and I'm just trying to understand the difference here. So the budget we approved doesn't account for any of the additional staff positions they're recommending, and because we haven't yet approved the differentiated pay, it doesn't or does account for some, even if it's a level of that pay.
Does not account for the differentiated pay. We do that through federal dollars, through blending. As far as the roles and positions, there may be some that they've got based on their staffing model and their allocation that are there, but not all encompassing. We just won't be able to do it. And we try to give principals a level of autonomy within the staffing of their building. So, you know, let's just call it 70 teachers. If you have 70 teachers, you might choose, and I'm thinking more comprehensive high school than really, you know, at this level sometimes. But if you have 70 teachers, you might choose to reduce as a principal one of those teachers and go to 69 teachers so that I can have an instructional coach, or so that I can have. Now, what that's going to do is that's going to make your student-teacher ratio a little bit more, and you acknowledge that going in, and we help you, you know, community superintendents push and pull on that. But so there's not as much of that here, but some of those decisions are made.
But even to Ms. Hill's question, the budget we approved already includes the federal dollars that we expect from Title I allocations. So and here's where maybe I'll make a suggestion as we grow in this process, which is that this is a great presentation, but it's coming to us post the budget we approved, right? So so there's kind of this, you know, hey, thanks for the presentation, but or as a board, we need to figure out what the gap is, what the financial difference is, and see where we would have to go to try to raise those funds.
Yeah, so you know, you're 100% right. I think our timeline was, our differentiated pay plan normally comes a little bit later in the year. I forget when we know, normally it seems like it's August or September, that we normally bring differentiated pay. So we did accelerate it some to get it to the board, because again, our differentiated pay plan encompasses more than just this. It's got more pieces and elements to it. So we tried to push on it some to get it forward, but I think it's a great point with all the timelines and understanding what federal dollars is going to be there. It absolutely is a great point to push.
Okay, I just feel right now that we're being presented options, but we've already approved a budget based on what we could do until now. So.
And do remember, the one thing I was going to say, do remember, and this has been a challenge in the state, Robin, and I know Jessica Birdsong, who's replacing Robin at the state. Robin, I think got promoted at the state. One of the things that was in, I think it was in last year's recommendations, and you correct me on this, but in last year's recommendation, there was conversation with the state about, and they can control only what they control, but the timeline the federal government disperses the dollars was really after the timeline that schools had started to develop plans. And so there was always conversation about, can we get the money? Can we get the money sooner? Can we get the money sooner? And so, you know, that's a part of this, is understanding what you're going to get and how you're going to plan. And so there will always be some of that push and pull, because we're at the, we kind of have to wait on the, you know, a little bit on the federal government and understanding exactly
But I
what's
think
gonna
we all
come.
agree, and thank you to that committee, but I think we all agree that we have we called them priority. I know that we're changing names all over, but because they are a priority for us, and we want to focus energy and efforts there and see those schools achieve the same results as everybody else. So thank you all for your work.
Thank you.
Ms. Robinson?
First I want to say thank you, Dr. Stewart. You are knocking this role out of the park. I'm so happy that we have you on our team. Thank you. It's been great to talk to the principals in my district that are a part of the partnership network, and they just have great things to say about you. So it's really wonderful to have you. So, and thank you, Val, and the rest of the board for the hard work that you guys put into this. You know, I think that Jenny and Marco definitely hit the nail on the head about some things that, you know, if not concerned, then, you know, the general public would have questions about, you know, why are we having this conversation now, but we had passed the budget last week. So, and I get it, you know, but I guess the one thing I want to talk about publicly is we're coming up on this 5-year into the partnership network agreement. How does this increase impact the long term? How do we keep this sustained and keep it going? And do we have a sense of whether or not the state will re-up, say, for another 5 years? Are we having that conversation yet? What do you think that looks like? Personally, I'm a big supporter of this. You know, the ability to recruit and retain talent in these schools is incredibly crucial to their success. And I think I know the value of how this would play out. My concern is, how do we keep this sustainable? And I'm hoping that maybe we're starting to think through that. So I wondered if you had any comments, or even Dr. Johnson, on that.
Absolutely. We're having these conversations all the time, mostly because this group of people is really committed to our kids, regardless of where they are on a list, right? And they realize that there's sustainability over time once we get off those lists. So they absolutely want to stay engaged. The other thing that I think is important for Hamilton County to understand is that we're really the pilot of this idea.
Right.
The notion that a city would wrap their arms around a school system, or the most at-need schools, to provide additional support. So the whole state is watching this relationship between the partnership network, this school board, the school district, to see, are we able to engage in a partnership in an authentic way that moves the needle forward. And I think every one of us wants to see this be successful. And Val, just 2 days ago when we were on together, is always talking about sustainability. What does it look like after the 5 years to sustain this partnership? And Commissioner Schwinn, who was also on the call 2 days ago, said the exact same thing. They'd like to see this not only be sustained, but be expanded in the state of Tennessee.
That's really encouraging, and I appreciate Val thinking about it from that perspective as well. You know, whenever we put this agreement in place with the state, you know, it's a really complicated process, and so I would hope that they're wanting to stay along with us for a long time to come. But, you know, we do have leadership change. Like, you know, the commissioner that put this in place is not the commissioner today, so it's really encouraging to hear that. So, but I think that we've got to be thinking about that when it comes to how these dollars are coming in and then how they're being spent. So. On a different note, I did wonder if maybe we could talk really quickly about the resource allocation review. Truthfully, in the contract that we have with the state, I don't quite remember the definition of what that really means. And so I wondered if you could just kind of brief us on what does that really mean to do the work of putting together a resource allocation review?
It's such a good question. It's brand new. So the state has added this as a part of the process as we attain these federal dollars and allocate them, but they've allowed districts over time to kind of present a review in a certain, you know, kind of however they want to present it. So the state is just tightening that space. And so we're just starting to have those conversations. And I think the partnership network is asking the right questions. And you all have asked the questions, like, if these resources are here, how are you measuring outcomes? And that's what this process is going to do. And internally,
as, you know, as a school system, we're having those exact same conversations.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned that the state's really treating us like a pilot, so that makes sense that they want us to really capture that data and help streamline that across the state. Have you seen them actually take anything that we've done as a pilot and actually start to implement it in other counties?
I'm not sure if y'all can hear me, but I'll just add to that. That comes back to that sustainability part of ensuring that as we're evaluating the resources and resources that are on the table, funding, things along those lines, we spend a good amount of time just discussing how is this going to be sustainable moving forward. So having that collaborative conversation on a yearly basis ensures that we're keeping that at the forefront.
And
Thank you.
I think Robin Kopp would be great to give context, just coming from the role about maybe anything she's seen in Hamilton County or
Okay.
because she's getting to see it, you know, a little bit across the state.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
I didn't quite hear what you said, Dr. Johnson. Could you repeat that, please?
yes, Tiffany Robinson was asking about any of the practices or anything happening out of the partnership network that may be being brought to scale in other priority schools across the state.
Sure. I think in my conversations with Dr. Stewart and Dr. Johnson, really all year long, I have just touted the tightness of the plan, the focus of the plan, and also the partnership network and how those two, the turnaround plan and the partnership network, has worked together. One of the things that we're looking at across the state is how do we leverage like the idea of this advisory board and the partnership network into other districts, because I know we haven't shared the goals and the progress toward the goals, but last year the partnership network schools met every one of the goals except for one, and that's just huge in turnaround work. We know these schools didn't get to the problems that they have overnight, and we do know that it takes a while to change that around, but the fact that the partnership network schools met all of their goals is just really encouraging, and encouraging to us in the State Department that this is a model that could be replicated across the state. So absolutely, we're committed to supporting this model any way we can.
Have anything else you wanted to present to us? All right, Dr. Johnson, do you have any comments, you and your team here? All right. Good deal. Thank you all very much. All right, that brings us to our delegations. Those that intend to speak this evening, if you would give your attention to Mr. McClendon.
Thank you, Chairman Wingate. If I could have the attention of Meg Day, Angie Nunley, Larissa Robinson, and Justin Wilkins, so I can read this once. Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints or concerns, you should contact the central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent. If you are criticizing an individual employee, I will interrupt you and ask you to refrain. If you continue to criticize or if your remarks are in error or becoming repetitive, I may interrupt you and ask you to sit down. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. I will tell you when you have 1 minute left. I will make it easy and raise a piece of paper right here in front of you so you know how you have 1 minute. You may begin when you are ready, and we will start with Ms. Meg Day.
I'm not on the list, but could I speak later? That's too bad. Hello?
Hello?
All right, well, he was getting the timer ready, so the timer makes me a little stressed, but I like a rule, so. All right. last meeting, well, hello. Last meeting, I talked about the problems with screen safety and overuse in the schools. I realized after speaking with many of you after the meeting that technology is a huge opportunity for Hamilton County schools. And I thank you for being willing to admit that improvements can be made and hopefully they can be put in place. What I was surprised to find out was that there doesn't seem to be a way to address it. And I am here again to offer a few suggestions. One important thing that can happen is to have a staff member at central office who can take responsibility for the digital well-being of our students. Over the summer, the staff member can use resources to develop a responsible use policy that covers every age so that students, parents, and faculty are all clear on how technology is being used. The RUP that we have in place now is not being followed or upheld very well. And before we start another academic year and we pursue that one-to-one student to device ratio, the digital well-being of students and a great RUP needs to be effectively put into place. I am very pro-screen for students today. It's the world we live in. In fact, I want our students to be well-versed in this. I want our students to be the best at technology, but we must have someone guiding the ship correctly or the problems are irreversible. There are 3 areas that need to be addressed: safety, quantity, and quality, and I'll talk briefly about each one. First, the current safety of our devices is pretty dismal. Devices need to be protected wherever they go, not just at schools. Instead of choosing what to try to keep out, maybe we can restrict everything and age appropriately allow a few things through the screens. This is probably the easiest thing to do. Other school systems have done it, and I know that we can too. Second is there needs to be science-based research on the quantity of screens being used in curriculum. This is easy to find out if we're talking about video games and entertainment, but science hasn't really caught up with K through 12 and technology education. In fact, science is pointing us in the other direction, that technology kind of squanders how they learn. During virtual, Hamilton County said it the best: students learn best in person. If you have a staff member at central office, they can look at parameters per age, look at their movement, and maybe set some things in place. If they haven't had outside recess, we lower technology. If they have PE, we can raise it. Right now, there's a 10-year-old girl who takes her laptop from class to class, and no one knows how much she's on it. Then she has about 4 hours when she gets home before she goes to bed. 1 hour of that is homework. And right now, it's all tech-based. So she's on her laptop after school for an hour. Third is the much neglected, but most important, is the quality of screen use. And this is two parts. Number one, we've got to get the best technology to our students and really funnel that towards the high school students. My son is on his 4th laptop this year from school, and last night I spent 30 minutes trying to troubleshoot it because it kept shutting off, and it's hard. We should do better, really focus on those high school years to prepare them. The second aspect of quality is looking at how screens can be used. I can talk about more of this in detail because there's a lot of research of how screens are being used, but we really need to be smart about what programs are being purchased. We need to focus on using technology to produce content, not really consume it. We're spending nearly $600,000 a year of federal money for memberships or subscriptions to online devices. Now, I want to close with looking at adults. I know that in my house, I am the biggest problem and I'm setting a bad example. I'm working on ways to change this because I want to be a leader in digital well-being for my own children. This year I got to know a teacher who is leaving Hamilton County Schools because of how much time on her computer she spends each night. As we approach the next academic year, I believe we can do better with our technology use for ourselves and for our students. Thank you for listening, and feel free to grab some chicken salad sandwiches and cookies in the kitchen. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Miss Monroe.
They're delicious, though.
Can I ask that somebody pass these out, if that's possible? It kind of helps explain part of this. Thank you. Be like a teacher, delegate, take one, pass it around. Yes. Good evening. First of all, I would like to apologize for my frustration last month. As you recall, I had 3 things I wanted to share with you, and I barely made it through 2 of them. And the last one is the most important. To review, I expressed thanks for health and safety and cleanliness being a priority, and I asked for ways to prevent sick kids from coming to school and eliminate punishing parents who keep sick kids at home. Secondly, I shared the unique skills students learned when they were virtual and asked how do we include teaching these skills to students to thrive in the digital world. I got you. My third topic is the most critical in my opinion, which is at school, we do more than reading, writing, and math. I'd like to talk about social emotional learning. I see students in crisis on a daily basis. In one day, I dealt with 3 major crises. A student struggling with changes took out the frustration by headbutting me repeatedly. Thankfully, I come with natural padding, so nobody was physically hurt. Later, I had to intervene in multiple students agitated to the point of physically fighting and walking out of the classroom. I helped several students work through the issue while the teacher could step outside and reset. Finally, as I walked into my last class, I see a student sitting on the floor, and when I ask, "Hey, how's it going?" He said, "I don't want to be here." When I stop to talk to him, the child opens up to me and calmly, in a whispering voice, says, "I want to stop breathing. I want to die and go to heaven." The child is 9 years old. The emotional toll our students and educators have been through this year is the greatest I've ever witnessed. Our students are experiencing such strong emotions, they don't know what to do, how to appropriately express them. While we have school counselors, the need is too great. We need to prevent crisis moments and give students the tools and strategies for their social and emotional well-being, just as we would give them tools and strategies to solve a math problem. I've passed around a paper with 2 resources that I've been working with this past year. The colorful one is the incredible 5-point scale. I've also been using social communication curriculum. It takes 15 minutes a day of video modeling and role play activities to recognize their own emotions and appropriate ways to pause, reflect, and make positive choices. When I see a student struggling, I can ask things like, where are you on the 5-point scale? What choices can you make? What would be the best choice? Let's make a plan. My students now have several tools in their toolbox. They just need somebody to walk with them through the tools in practice. This concept should not be limited to the special education teacher, but the whole school for consistency. This example came up last week when I was called to assist a teacher, another teacher's class, where a child was screaming so loudly, class could not continue. I took the child aside and said, "What number are you?" The child immediately responded, "I'm a 2, but I want an excellent day. I need to do some breathing." A minute or 2 later, the child rejoined the class. No more screaming the rest of the day. This child has gone from multiple episodes a day to 1 or 2 a week. I imagine it would be even fewer if all teachers in our building followed the same plan. The same 5-point colorful scale should be hung up in all classrooms, hallways, cafeterias, and more. Consistency works. Looking ahead, how do we meet the social emotional needs of all of our students? Can we invest in a program like the incredible 5-point scale and social skills curriculum, which is everydayspeech.com? It is for K-12. It doesn't require extra work on the teachers to plan, and it provides all the tools for the students in their toolbox. I've tried Pure Edge. This is 100 times better. Let me tell you why. One example is when I immediately followed up on a situation that happened at recess. Instead of pulling my small group, I put in my password on that teacher's laptop, found the topic, and showed the video of exactly what had happened in that similar situation. The thought bubbles, inner monologue, and replay of the scenario of how to make a different choice. It was a wonderful segue into a discussion on what had just happened and how to deal with it in the future. One student came up to me a few days later and told me how he had done just what was in the video and he stayed out of trouble. This student is not on my caseload, but since I'm in his classroom for inclusion, and he sees me as another teacher that he can learn from. He was given an immediate strategy and put it to use. Even my AP gave the program rave reviews when she did one of my observations while I was teaching it. I've read recently that HCS has been given over $100 million in ESSER funds. How much will be spent over the next 3 years to support students' emotional well-being? There are 45,000 students and their families, as well as the entire county, watching and waiting to see how we will continue to be the fastest improving school and shape Hamilton County as the place to live because of the great schools. No pressure.
Miss Angie Nunley.
Forgive me, I'm really bad at public speaking. I absolutely hate it. Okay, I'm here to speak about masks and the health effects. So on April 25th, my kids and I went with my husband to Greenville because he had to do some work in his office there. While we were there, my daughter got up on the 27th and began fainting multiple times. She's never had this problem before. So after the second time fainting, her lips turned blue and she stopped breathing. I have problems with passing out myself, but mine is completely different than what she experienced. She could not breathe, her lips turned blue. We had to call 911, and an ambulance trip later, she spent 4.5 hours in the Children's Hospital in Greenville, South Carolina. They diagnosed her with severe dehydration. And while we were there, she told me, I know I take water to school with me, but I don't drink it. Why not? I'm afraid to tell the teachers I have to go to the bathroom because I don't want them to get mad at me. Okay, well, they tell you to bring a water bottle, so they should expect you to have to take bathroom breaks. So they did 4 hours of EKG monitoring. So they didn't see anything but to follow up with her pediatrician. So I called while we were still there and made her a follow-up appointment. When we came back home on the 27th, I said, rest, we came back on the 28th. We went to see the doctor on the 29th, and he talked to her, and she explained what happened, and he listened very well and said, you know what, I want you to go see a cardiologist. This is my 9-year-old daughter. She doesn't have heart problems. So she goes to see the cardiologist on the 5th. So she goes back to school. I kept her at home the rest of the week so that she could fully recover from her dehydration. She goes back to school the following Monday on the 3rd. When I picked her up, she said, Mom, I got dizzy at school today. And I'm like, what were you doing? I was sitting at my desk. Did you have your mask on? Yes. They won't let me take it off. Okay. So I told her, this is really serious. If you get dizzy, I don't care what you're doing, lay your head down, try to raise your hand and tell your teacher you need to go see the nurse. So I sent both of her teachers a message and told them just as much. Tuesday, she goes to school and I get a call from the nurse. She's in the nurse's office. She was dizzy. She sat there for a while. She drank some water and she went back. She said she felt well enough to go back to her class. Took her to the cardiologist on the 5th. And he listened to what happened leading up to the passing out and subsequently. She said, oh, I got dizzy at school. And he says, well, do you have your mask on? Yes. Well, how does it fit? I need to see it. She didn't have to wear her mask at the doctor's office. She's under 12. So she put her mask on, and he said, that is 100% what is causing your dizziness. It is not dehydration. It is the mask. So I asked him to send a note to the school giving her a medical exemption, which he was very glad to do. This is the first doctor that I have come across, but since the 5th, I have come across many more that are fed up with the masks. They see the harm it is doing to these children. It's just a fun fact in my research. The COVID virus has a diameter of 60 to 140 nanometers. That's a billionth of a meter. The various masks, if you go from a medical mask to an N95 to a cloth mask, have a thread diameter of 55 to 440 micrometers. That's a millionth of a meter. The virus is 1,000 times smaller than the thread count. So in South Carolina and here, the doctors and nurses have all said the same thing. The kids spend their weekends in the hospital from dehydration and constipation where they're not drinking enough and they're not breathing clean air. The body needs clean, fresh air to survive. You are restricting this clean, fresh air. They are breathing toxic and contaminated air. I will not have my children put at risk. And I know there are hundreds of other parents that feel the same way. If this continues, we will be forced to go back to private school where there are no masks.
Mrs. Larissa Robinson.
Hi, I'm back. And let's make sure this mic works this time for me, okay? I want to start off by thanking Mr. Highlander and Mrs. Thurman for personally apologizing for me for the way I was treated last time. What disrespect and a shame. But it's all good, because all it does is gets me fired up more and makes me want to fight harder. So let's get into it. How cute of a move y'all made to announce parental choice on masks to start June 1st, days before this meeting. You know parents are fed up, and you thought we would be pleased and stop us from coming tonight. Well, as you can see, and there's plenty more outside, we're not pleased. This is not good enough. We parents want parents' choice on masks starting today. And for further, thank you. And for further future school years for all kids, we don't want you to assess the cases and base your decision off of fake numbers. We don't want you basing your decision off CDC recommendation, because that's exactly what it is, a recommendation. We don't want you bending over for the teachers union as well. Now, unlike some, I come with research and facts, okay? Here's a study from the American Associations of Pediatrics and Surgeons stating and proving this virus-sized particle are way too small, and it goes right through that cloth that you're wearing. Here's a study from the acpjournals.org showing that surgical masks did not reduce COVID infection rate among mask wearers. Here's a study from Stanford University reported by the National Institute of Health that showed that masks do absolutely nothing to help prevent the spread of COVID and that their use is more harmful. Here's another study from the MIT that shows that social distancing does not stop COVID-19 indoors. So where's your studies and research, Dr. Johnson? And we don't want your liberal doctor opinions. I've emailed all you guys these studies and letters from other parents that could not be there tonight. And trust me, there's like 100 people out there right now. With all that said, this is what pisses me off even more. I have a letter from a principal of Snow Hill Elementary stating, I quote, masks are not absolutely required in grades kindergarten through second classrooms. Not required. But yet they were forced on our kids when the whole time it was not required. How do you not see that as child abuse? Meet Rebecca. She has a daughter, Daisy. She's 6 years old. She attends Snow Hill Elementary. She was made by the school to wear a mask this whole school year. She would come home most days upset because she would get in trouble for pulling her mask down at her desk to breathe. Getting in trouble for wanting to breathe. And this whole time it has not been required. 6 years old.
Hey, ladies, we have someone speaking at the mic, please.
Do you not see the mental stress these kids are going through? They wear them for 8 hours a day with 2 little breaks, all while kindergarten through second was not required to. Now we have the Williamson case here in Tennessee that has set the precedent that no one in this room or school has the authority to force a mask on a child. Not you, not you, not you, not you, not teachers like you, all right, to force our child to wear masks. So we parents of Hamilton demand a vote today to end this mask BS today. And I need 5 of you to stand up to Dr. Johnson and get this child abuse to end today, right now. Or I'll make sure none of you get elected again, and I'll make sure Dr. Johnson doesn't climb up that political chain that you're climbing up. And guess what? I'll be back next year.
Excuse me. We're not addressing anybody in the school system, as Mr. McClendon stated already.
So there's rules for me, but not for others?
No, he read the rules for everybody who's going to speak tonight.
Okay, I will make sure none of you get elected again, okay? You guys need to vote this today, to end this today. We're done. We're done. Bring our child smiles back now. Bring them back now.
Mr. Justin Wilkinson. Mr. Justin Wilkinson. Wilkins, sorry.
Thanks for letting me speak tonight. So first of all, I just want to say that a health crisis like we've experienced over the last year shows how much, no matter where we come from, what we look like, what part of town, the health of one person is affected by the health of the person next to them and the person next to them. One child's health in any of our classrooms depends on the health of another child that's next to them. The school board should keep its commitment to follow the public health guidance made to families, the commitment that they made to families earlier this year. The CDC, along with other experts like the Chief of Infectious Disease at Vanderbilt, David Aronoff, and many others, have proven and shown that mask requirements have successfully mitigated the spread of COVID. It has kept COVID out of the classroom, which has kept our schools open, and our parents at work, and most importantly, some of the most vulnerable children in our community safe. So, right now, until vaccinations are more widely available for younger children, we still have children who are unvaccinated in our community. Many of them are some of the most vulnerable children. And especially with new variants and the state lagging in vaccinations, us all doing our part to protect the vulnerable seems like it's the right thing to do. The public health guidance on requirements has been proven to work. In fact, here in the county, it mitigated the spread. It kept COVID out of the classroom. It ensured folks could stay in school and get back to work. We're all better when we are all healthy. Mask requirements protect my neighbor's children, not just my own. We agree to speed limits in school zones because speeding in a school zone endangers children other than your own. We have no smoking requirements in schools because smoking endangers other children other than your own. Not wearing a mask in this airborne pandemic endangers other children other than your own. We also live in a community where we each sacrifice a little bit. We each live in a community where we all sacrifice a little bit to care only about ourselves, because what one of us does also affects the other. The community is stronger when we care more about others rather than just ourselves. We should come together across our differences that are used to divide us We should reject the politicization of science and health that shut down schools and prolonged this virus in this state longer than it needed to in the first place. And the health and safety requirements like masking has kept COVID out, parents at work, vulnerable children safe. And so my question would be, can we all not just suck it up a few more days, not for ourselves, but for each other, to keep the vulnerable safe in our community? And look, my kids don't like wearing masks either, but they understand that the requirement to wear them isn't an infringement on their liberty that's destroying this country, but it's what they do to protect the vulnerable children in their classroom and their friends so that we can get through this crisis together. Thanks.
All right, is that everyone? All right, good deal. Let's move on to, before we get to approval of the consent agenda, if you feel as if you need to read the board member disclaimer statement, please do so now.
Who do I give these letters to? These are letters
Ma'am,
from
we're
parents.
having our meeting right now, please.
Who do I give this to? Thank you. I appreciate that.
Go ahead, Mrs. Thurman.
Will you make sure you get those letters, Rhonda? Thank you.
I need you to leave,
Thank
please.
you.
Mr. Highlander, did you need to read the consent?
Yes, sir, I would. I declare that I have a daughter and son-in-law employed in the system, and that my board votes may have an effect on their employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in whatever I think is the best interest of the school system. Thank you.
Ms. Thurman?
Yes. Excuse me, I have declared that I have a relative who works for the school system, and if the board's vote on the budget or policies may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
Anybody else?
I have to read, but do we have something that, because I see a lot of movement, so I don't know. I'm good.
Oh, please. Seriously.
All right, so,
I have to read it as well.
Marco needs to go, and then I need to go.
I declare that I have a spouse and sisters-in-law who work for the school system, and that the board's vote on budget policies may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a parent who works for the school system, and that the board's vote on really anything may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
all right, anyone else? All right, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Can we pull things now, sir?
Hang on. All right. Did you get those, Ms. Ford?
Yes, sir.
All right, do we have any items we'd like to take a look at? Dr. Highlander.
I'd like to look at 9F1. I have some questions about it.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes, I'd like to pull four, I'm sorry, 9C, 4A, please. The fees. I want to make a comment, please.
Okay. Mrs. Hill?
I'd like to pull 9C1E, normal park field improvements. And I'd like to pull 9C1N, Hershey Creamery Renewal.
The what?
Hershey Creamery Renewal.
What?
Mr. McClendon had already made note of that earlier. Tucker, did you have? Yes. All right, any other items? Anything else?
Hold on just 1 second.
Go ahead, Mr. Bennett.
Oh, okay, it's probably under the bids and contracts. Okay.
We're trying to be sure we've got our records right.
School nutrition.
We're good. Thank you for your indulgence.
Okay, Mrs. Ford.
Thank you. Dr. Highlander,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. McClendon,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. All right, Dr. Highlander.
Thank you. I do appreciate you getting the contract for me, and I had some questions when I read it. Or one is, the contract, I did not see, it said that we approved it in April. Was it standing alone, or was it merged with with something else? Because I looked at my notes and looked back through, and I didn't see where we'd approved it in April. Was it standing alone, or was it in a group of other things?
No, we've brought it forward now.
Pardon me?
We're bringing it forward now.
Oh, it
for
was not
approval.
approved prior?
No.
But we've been using it since March?
No, we've been in conversation with them since March. So we've got two parts. It's an extension of, you had already approved well before TNTP contract. So this is an extension to add a different service to the
Oh, it's a
work of the
different
district.
service?
Correct.
The $60,000 from March to June of this year, the way I read it, did I
Will-
read it wrong?
Will be for a different service. So it'll go beyond June. It'll go beyond June.
Because is the $60,000 annual, or
It's not. It'll be,
just for a certain, whatever specified times needed, I
Correct.
guess? Okay. I didn't understand that if we're adding something and it said it was for that time period, if we hadn't approved it, I just didn't see how it could be done. Now, this is not ESSER money, is it?
it may be, yeah, it is.
It is ESSER
Yeah.
money. So if we keep it up after ESSER, then we'll have to come back and
We
fund it.
won't. We won't. It's professional learning support. So TNTP is doing all of our, has done a lot of our work with our literacy implementation and supporting all of our professional learning that's taken place, and really marrying the state's 360 training along with EL, expeditionary learning, along with some other things, letters, and some other foundational literacy skill training support.
I'm all for skills and improvement. As a teacher for a long time, anything we can do to improve. I just was kind of concerned. It seemed confusing. It looked like we were doing it from March through June, and we hadn't approved it yet, but you're saying that's not the case.
So we've been with TNTP for some time. A TNTP contract came forward, I don't know the month, but it came forward earlier in the year. And so they've been doing work with us, alongside us, with implementation of our literacy implementation. And when I say foundational skills, I'm talking about literacy, foundational literacy skills for students. So this is an extension to add on some services based on ESSER, based on the State 360, et cetera.
Okay, I searched and couldn't see it. So it's maybe in the past that we've done it. It's not in the spring we did it, March or April, but it was in the past we approved the program.
And the going forward.
I think the memo says April 2020.
April 2020.
It said April 2020, but.
That's right.
And going forward, right? So April 2020 is when we started with TNTP, correct?
Okay, so we started it, but we didn't approve it, or we had approved it?
You have,
Okay.
way back, not this.
Okay. Okay, it was just confusing to me. Thank you. I think you kind of clarified it a little bit. Thank you.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment about the fees. Of course, we've taken the other fees that parents have been charged out, and we've added it to our budget, which is a great thing. But it's still very troubling about how much money students have to pay to play sports. And I know we've talked about getting some of that taken care of also in our budget, and I wish that we would do that. And also some of the band fees and some of that kind of thing that we can look at taking care of in future budgets to keep parents from having to come out with so much expense. Parents just cannot get out and raise money to get their kids to do some of the things that are, some kids' ticket to college, keeps them off the street, keeps them busy. And I just think it's something that we don't give enough attention to at budget time, and that's me included. But I think that's something we really need to look at in the future, because those fees are quite steep in some cases, especially if you have 2 or 3 kids and they play a couple of different sports.
They are.
Okay, thank you.
But Mr. Perez, before we get to your comment, I needed to ask, Dr. Highlander, did you want to make a motion to put that item back on the
I will make
agenda?
the motion to put it back on.
And that was the TNTP. All right, do we have a second for that? Sorry.
Second.
All right. All right, go ahead, Mrs. Ford.
Dr. Highlander,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. McClendon,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith, Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes, Mr. Perez, was your comment about
Yeah,
Ms. Thurman? Okay, go
I
ahead.
just want to echo that as well, especially, again, we talk about equity in every respect, and some of those fees, you know, anywhere from $500 to $1,000 just means that a lot of our students can't participate. I know there's scholarships to some of these things. I know some of the boosters raise some money, but I really, I agree with you. I think too many scholarships in college, look at some of these skills, too many opportunities in the future depend on these skills, and some of our families and some of our students have no capacity to even look at those opportunities. So I do hope that as we move forward, we look at ways, even if, again, I'm all for getting our community partners around this town and county to help and support some of those things. But yeah, it's for a lot of families, and I'll say at times, including my family with 3 children, it just was out of the possibilities. So.
Mrs. Thurman, do you want to make a motion?
I just approved to.
I'd like, I have a
move-
comment.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry,
Go
Mrs.
ahead,
Hill.
I'm sorry.
Is that was about Mrs. Thurman's?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so Marco, you're definitely not alone. Rhonda and I have both lamented about this before. I just wanted to give y'all an update from after we talked about the fee structure last year. I had a really interesting conversation with the marching band director at Lookout Valley. And I think what we find is that to be able to go to conferences and competitions, that is what these numbers often represent. And they're excruciatingly expensive, but they are in fact the things that give people quite a lot of opportunities. I continue to be bowled over by the cost to participate in cheer and dance. But certainly marching band and athletics are also pretty expensive as well. When I look at the suggested budget for maintaining musical instruments alone, the how of this leaves me scratching my head. So it's a big question mark.
If I may add to that, with musical instruments, those are the ones that are provided by the school. Many of us then, in addition to that, rent on a monthly basis a musical instrument
Yeah.
or purchase an instrument. So again, for a lot of families, then this would not be an option.
Yeah.
And we don't want that.
I have a question for Jenny. So are you saying that you feel like it's lopsided what we provide or spend for, like, say, dance and cheer versus like band or anything that's
Well, so
musically
these are
related?
in the debt column. I mean, I am agog at the cost to participate in activities at East Hamilton and Ottawa in particular. You know, at East Hamilton Middle School, to participate in cheer is $1,506. At East Hamilton High, to participate in cheer, it ranges from $350 to $2,387. At Ottawa High, to participate in cheer and dance, it ranges from $500 to $1,600. At CSAF and at Signal Mountain Middle High, those programs go upward to $1,000. So excruciatingly expensive. Ottawa High School's athletic cost is $1,500. Their marching band cost is $1,250. But we have numerous fees here. I mean, just a quick glance at the highlight, you can see all of them that are especially high. And you know, Tiffany, I would not go so far as to say that I'm suggesting that we fix this, because I don't really know how we could fix it. But it's something that is a challenge.
Yeah, I just wanted clarity on what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. I actually was curious, do we have an audit committee of this or some form of committee that can actually look at how to balance this? Because I think that could be a solution.
So I'll be very frank with you. When it comes to sports or student athletes and programs, we could have another $100 or $200 million budget
Yeah, it'll never
on
cover all
the
of
side
it.
just to fund sports. So I'll tell you what I used to do as a coach. you know, I used to determine, okay, this is how much it's gonna cost at, you know, for the season for player X, and so, student athlete X, and so if that number was $600, not counting uniform, you know, stuff like that, it's gonna be about $600 for us to do the camps and do whatever, and then we give them an opportunity to fundraise, you know, and so, you know, and a lot of these cost fees that we see, what may not be reflected within here are the fundraising opportunities that, you know, students kind of go out and earn their own money through a sponsored fundraiser by the program that begins to chip away at whatever those costs are. So it's going to be different by school when it comes to sports and athletics. I don't know that, and this is just something that's always come to this board, you know, I know that I've seen in past situations that sports fees don't always, you know, I hate to call them fees, but, you know, the amount to play sports doesn't always come before the.
Well, I think it's interesting that you bring up that whenever you were a coach, you're setting the fees, and I'm sure that's what's happening here, but I do find it really interesting that our lowest income schools have the lowest fees and our highest income schools, or mostly, have the higher fees. And what that tells me is that someone's saying, I know these kids can cover this, therefore they can go fundraise. And I feel like there's some biasness there, which is not healthy, I think. But my bigger concern actually, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to make this point real quick, is that if we're going to do open enrollment in our high schools, and every school's going to be a future ready school, every kid that can go to these schools needs to have the ability to say, I'm here for future ready and I want to play a sport. And I just think that if we're going to be real about creating choice within our district, then we do need to figure out how to, I don't know the answer either, but I really appreciate it being brought up, because I've never thought about it from that perspective until right now. But I think that, like, that's real equity whenever you can say, I can go to any.
You're gonna think about it a lot.
I know.
Well,
boys. Especially with how many sports my oldest plays. But my point is that, like, it feels like something that we should tackle, because if we want to create open enrollment, like, for our high schools and say any kid from anywhere can go to any school, then we need to really mean that. And so, I don't know, I hadn't really thought about it this way until now.
Well, the other side of it too that I just point out is yes, you know, yeah, I see the schools that maybe can afford it more are paying more, the schools that can't are paying less, but also there are probably some experiences and some exposures, which again is connected to your conversation.
That's actually what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at. And so the balance to me should be that perhaps there shouldn't be autonomy in deciding these fees. And I know that's opening up a big can of worms, and I'm not about to, like, jump into that can, because I'm going to let you do it instead. Or Rhonda. Rhonda can go fight this fight. Rhonda can fight this fight. Or all of these parents here fighting for, you know, a cause they are passionate about, I'm going to have them go fight this fight, because they've got a lot of energy. But my point is that I think it's a real problem if we say we want you to go to any school that you feel excited about, well, then we got to make the barrier low for every activity.
So I will say this, just bear in mind that, you know, this is the standard fee, like most, and I know most of our sponsors and coaches do this. They know their student situations, right? So if Brian Johnson comes and, you know, the fee is $1,000, and you know that I'm in a situation where mom and dad are not there, they do a pretty good job of understanding the student situations and trying to work through it. I haven't heard of any situation, Justin's maybe been more closer to than others.
I don't disagree with you, because I think that our teachers are incredibly empathetic and passionate. But if I'm a parent and I see this, I'm going to tell you, hey, my oldest is Elijah. You're not playing that. That's $1,000, and I don't have an extra $1,000. So I think that we got to really think about it from the opposite angle of what's the barrier to entry before they could even ask a coach, like, is there a way to help me with the. Anyways, I don't know the real answer, except that it feels like something to really find an answer to.
Mr. McClennan, do you have something on that?
Yeah, just if we could, and I don't know if it is even possible. Is it possible, like, to add to this spreadsheet, like, how much does the district bring in like, chorus fees? And then how much does it bring it, just so we have a basis for when it does come budgeting. I think what we did with the general instruction fee was incredibly smart. But so when we do get into budget season, you know, next year, or even when we get into the mid-year and we have extra money and, you know, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with it, just so we have, you know, even if it is $150 million, just so we have a bandwidth on, okay, well, this year, you know, to bring in chorus fees, $3 million or whatever, so we as a board know where it is. I don't know if that's possible. I know
Well,
we get our audit book.
I'm shaking my head absolutely, and I'm thinking about, I'm not even looking at Mariana for approval, so let me back up. I don't know if you, yeah, but I think it's a great thought that we can absolutely
Yeah, I
dig
like
into
that
and
idea.
work on. Yeah.
Just because that's a lot of numbers, and I don't know, is course $500,000, and that's something that, could easily be solved versus athletics, where it could be $50 million and not so much.
I do, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Smith, did you want to say something on this?
Mostly been said. I will say this, with a grandfather of two girls that at East Hamilton, almost $4,000. And I've bought a lot of candy bars and donuts and had my truck washed. But in the middle of all that, it's been an incredible learning experience for those girls to get out and raise their money. And so I see both sides of that. The other thing too, there was a time around here that when a child didn't have the money to pay, they didn't participate. I hadn't heard that happening in a long, long time. And so I think our coaches, our teachers, our band people somehow find a way to make it happen. So that's a good thing. I don't have the answer either, except go get your car washed and buy a dozen donuts. All I can tell you.
Mr. Perez?
So just briefly, I think, thank you, Mr. McClendon, for voicing that. I just do want to say or highlight that, to me, if we put priorities, a lot of times our priorities are sports, and that's great. But I also want to raise the importance of the arts and those opportunities as well. So whatever we do, it really is, how do we make this equitable? Because unfortunately, the Perez's have no sports capacity whatsoever, but they had capacities in other areas, so.
We're making up.
I'll say too, Dr. Highlander, did you have something? Go ahead.
Whenever you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that Dr. Johnson has heard this a lot from me since he's been here, and obviously, my background and my passion is athletics, but I'm passionate about all extracurriculars. I really am. And I told him this, and you guys may go, I don't see the correlation, I don't understand this, but I've been around it long enough to know. Every year I go to Cookeville for the state football championships, and Kim's gracious enough to let me take a day. And my pastor and I go and meet another friend from Nashville, and we just go meet, and we sit and watch whatever the games are that day. And I've told Dr. Johnson since he's been here that I'll know that our system is, as a whole, performing at a high level, and we have done great work so far in academics, and that's where we needed to start, no doubt. But that I know that our system is in a really good place when I can go up there every year and see at least one Hamilton County school competing. Because what that tells me is not that we've gone and hired a really good football coach who's an X and O guy, and that we value what's going on. And that excellence has not just permeated the classrooms and the halls and the instruction and the academics, but now it's spilling out into other places. And I don't know what the answer is. I can tell you from being around here for a long time that, you all, and people have ribbed me unmercifully this last few months with East Hamilton Middle School opening and how nice it is and the facilities. And I've told all of those coaches that have come to play at our field that here's the deal, this is now the standard. And so since the county commission was gracious enough to say we're not going to build any more secondary schools without making sure that they come with facilities, because they hadn't. I won't say ever, but it's been a long, long time. And hey, here's the standard now. And so it really has to be, what do we value? Do we value those things? And I know we all do, but then that has to be part of our conversation, and not just budget time. I mean, hey, it's real easy to say, hey, we got a budget for that. We know that, but we just have to value those things. We have to value theater. We have to value the band and the chorus and the debate team and the Model UN. We have to value those things, and when we value those things, we put resources behind them, and resources not always a check. But we have to put resources there, and I don't know what the answer is either, and it is, some of it is going to be financial, and we have to figure out a way to do that, but I'm thankful for where we've come so far academically and laying a foundation, but as I said, I think it'll begin to spill out into other areas, and these extracurriculars that we're talking about, they are so incredibly valuable. I wouldn't, I don't, who knows where I would be without those things. And I know many of you can say those same things, and they're even more important now than they were then, because just the lack of physical activity and socialization that goes on because they're all staring at a screen all the time. So anyway, Dr. Highlander.
Thank you. You sort of stole some of my thunder, Mr. Wingate, or shall I say Coach Wingate. But a variety of extracurricular activities shows a direct parallel in the classroom. I mean, it shows a direct parallel, and I'm talking about sports, yes, but I'm also talking about band, I'm talking about chorus, the Model UN, all these things. If we can get into a child's or a young person's mind, we can get into what they like, they will perform better academically too. I mean, I've seen this through many, many years, and I coached for over 40 years, but I also taught academic classes. I taught 3 different AP classes, so at the same time. And I will say, since I've been on the board, I've had a few instances where I've been approached by someone saying, this parent cannot afford for their child to do so-and-so. And I contacted, so if normally the coach, the sponsor, will know about the child's circumstances, sometimes they don't. And I've sort of been a go-between and talked to a couple of people. I talked to a band director, did not know that the father had left and the mother was working as a parapro in one of our schools trying to support 5 children. And there's no way she could pay for the band fee for a group that went all over the country performing. But yet, that band director said, we'll take care of it, Dr. Hollander. Don't you worry. We'll take care of it. I want to say, I'm thinking, I know our Fund for Excellence gives money every year, mainly for the middle schools' athletic programs and other programs that have needs. And I think a lot of other people can do that. And a lot of people are doing that. Dr. Johnson's Foundation may be wanting to do that.
Dr. Johnson.
Sir? Well, the School Systems Foundation that you started, but I know the Fund for Excellence has been doing it for several years. And so, yeah, well, he did. I mean, he was instrumental in starting it, so give him a little credit. But it is very important that we make it. I agree with, I think about Joe Galloway that said, someone mentioned about what his parents need to be involved. He said, look, a lot of my players are single parents, and they're working maybe 2 minimum wage jobs to put a roof over the head. He said, we go out to eat, I buy them a meal. He said, if they have something, I pay for it. And there's so many of our teachers and coaches, to me, that are heroes. They're real heroes, and I appreciate that. And I think about, I've got a young man that I've worked with that I'm trying to get in the YCAP program. But, I mean, and that's making it, I said, you need to stay in school. They'll help you there. And programs like that are essential. And I agree with what you all have said. We need to do everything for the well-being of the whole child. The whole child. Academics first, but if you don't have the extracurricular, many of the academics will die. Thank you.
Mrs. Thurman, do you, I think you said it a minute ago, but
Yeah.
you wanted to motion
Go
to
ahead.
approve
I
that.
I make the motion to approve the fee.
Did you get a second already, Ms. Ford?
Second.
Go ahead, Mr. Bennett.
Yeah, I was going to maybe throw something to Dr. Drake and the team that's looking at the equity issues, because the board's kicked around this topic, and I can't remember who it was, but someone pointed out that the fees seem to be higher at the schools that can afford the higher fees. And I would encourage the board, as you're having your equity discussion in view of your equity policy, to also ask the corollary to that question: what opportunities are missing at the schools that can't charge those fees?
Yeah.
Because that's the reverse image of your observation. And I think as the administration really starts to dig into the application of the equity policy this board just adopted, you need to start thinking about the hidden cost of the fees you can't charge.
Okay, Mrs. Ford?
Dr. Highlander,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. McClendon,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Sermon,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Okay, Mrs. Hill, I believe you had an item.
I had 2 items, and I misspoke, and I hope that the record can be corrected without us having to revote. But I said N, but it's actually O that I pulled. not
That's for the
in.
ice cream?
Yes. But first, though, the first thing I pulled was 9C1E, which is the normal park field improvements. And actually, what I have to say changed a little bit since you said what you did, Chairman Wingate, which is that I am just so thankful and thrilled that the normal park middle school or upper school field has made it to this point in the process. It's been on the list as an investment for a while, and Commissioner Sharp and I have been talking about it for a couple of years now. And as we've talked about, I've always explained to Brian, like, in as much as I recognize that the normal park upper building desperately needs to be replaced, I do see that we are going to need that property, and that I don't see this project as a sunk cost project. I see it as one that is a sustainable choice. And right now, this project covers making sure that we get the glass out of the field, the rocks out of the field that the children have been using. It will give us irrigation on the field and drainage, both of which are going to help maintain the health of the grass. But something that isn't going to be included in this project currently is lighting and also bleachers. There are some bleachers on site that are possibly as old as the building itself. They were discovered in an archaeological process under a great deal of growth, a decade ago, I think, and families put new wood on them. But Joe, when you said that in building out the athletic facilities at East Hamilton Middle School, that sets the standard for all facilities moving forward, the practical part of me acknowledges that we can't get there overnight. So this field is going to set a new standard for Normal Park, but certainly is something that we want to keep pressing for to improve over time. But I thank you all in advance for supporting the school. And I move to approve this.
All right, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Ford?
Dr. Highlander?
Yes.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McClendon?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Chairman Wingate?
Yes.
Okay,
Second
item
item.
O. Item O is the Hershey Creamery renewal proposal. And I wanted to bring this up for two reasons. First of all, I just love it when we talk about things like ice cream. But what also stood out to me is that, occasionally we end up in a conversation about details. In fact, Mr. Highlander was asking questions, well, have we approved, have we not approved, et cetera. But I'd just like to point out that we are being asked to approve. In April, we approved a contract with the Hershey Creamery Company as our contract vendor for ice cream products. And that was terrific. That was last month. However, since that time, the price of mini ice cream sandwiches has gone up. And the cost difference for each mini ice cream sandwich has gone up wholesale by 2 cents. And we are being brought this again to vote on. And I think that is a testament to the detail-orientedness of our staff. And I do wonder, though, is the price of an ice cream sandwich going to go up for our students, given the inflation on the cost of a wholesale ice cream sandwich?
So, Ms. Hill, I'll agree with you that the detailed orientation of our staff is solely down to the excellent director, Kristen Noss. And if Kristen was here, I know she could tell you if the price was going to go up, but I will get that information to you. I do not expect the price to go up, but I'll confirm it with Ms. Noss.
We do not have an elementary member on our staff. However, I should not assume that only elementary school students eat mini ice cream sandwiches. But Macy, would you agree that it is important that the price of ice cream remain affordable?
I
I agree this is a very important topic of discussion, and that it should remain affordable for all students.
Thank you, Macy.
Of course.
I move to approve.
And I would like to speak from the viewpoint of a parent who has a child that continuously goes into the negative on their lunch account from purchasing said ice cream sandwiches, and that I encourage the price to go up because, number one, the cost should be passed on to the customer, and number two, my son needs to stop eating ice cream sandwiches. So, Jenny, you will be paying for our next lunch debt.
I don't even pay for my kids' lunch.
All right, so we've
Ms.
got
Hill, we confirmed that the price is not going up for kids.
That is important. We have some reporters here who have been blood in the water, know that the price of ice cream, mini ice cream sandwiches is not going up next year. I move to approve. Thank you.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Ford?
Did she move it, put it back and
She
get a
did.
second?
Oh, I put it back in,
Sorry, I
all
missed
right.
that.
Yep, it's in.
Who was the second?
Tucker.
Thank you. Dr. Highlander?
Yes.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McClendon?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Sermon?
Yes.
Chairman Wingate?
Yes. Okay, so I believe that drops us down to administrative matters. We have an approval to request to renew/extend the our contract with Erlanger for our athletic trainers. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion on that?
I did have a question about that. I remember a couple, or probably 3 years now that we put this into place. Okay. I guess is our process always to just do an extension versus a new bid? I wasn't sure, like on a service like this.
So this is the second year, isn't it?
I think it's the second.
Oh,
This is the second.
is
So-
it really?
So
Oh,
our
okay.
Our
Okay. Feels
RFP
like a long
was,
time ago.
was for up to 4 years.
Got
So
it.
it was a 1 year
got it.
with up to 3
Like,
1 year
one-year
extensions.
extensions. Okay.
But
Thank you.
because, y'all may recall that the board last year or 2 years ago, and Dr. Highlander, I remember, was instrumental in this, was concerned about some aspect of this arrangement, which is now lost to me. So rather than having automatic extensions baked into this contract, it was going to be renewable for 1 year. We've done that. And so now we're doing the rest, the other 2 extensions that this board had envisioned initially.
Okay, thank you, because
If I'm-
that
if I
feels
may-
like a lifetime
if
ago.
I may answer real quickly,
Barely remember.
it's a fail-safe
Yeah.
to make sure that it's renewable for, as he said, the length of the contract, but yet if we are not locked in, if they're not meeting their obligations, they are, so we're fine.
Yeah.
So, thank you, thank you.
But to your question about the propriety, ordinarily, it's a 4-year option. And when you put something out, if we did a request for proposal for 1 year, we could enter into a 1-year contract. If we did an RFP for 2 years, it'd be a 2-year contract. We did 4, but the board basically reserved those last 2 years.
Thank you. I completely forgotten that.
Mr. Smith?
Just to point out, that contract was for trainers, on Friday nights, but what Erlanger has done is gone way beyond that. They're providing physicians, doctors, to the football games on Friday nights. So Erlanger has, they've just gone over and beyond what they were expected to do, so just wanted to point that out.
If I could
Dr.
say-
Highlander?
I agree, they've done a good job, and the people before them did a good job. They very well did, but they do more than just Friday nights.
That's right.
They all, the ones before them, the Center for Sports Medicine, Erlanger, they have all taken good care of our athletes, and for that, I'm very appreciative. And they are there on Friday nights, but they're there Monday through Saturday. They really are, those trainers are available, and I appreciate that.
All right. I think we had our motion, right? I'm ready, I think.
Dr. Highlander?
Yes.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McClendon? Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Sermon?
Yes.
Chairman Wingate?
Yes. Next item would be the differentiated pay plan for 2021, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Did you get those, Ms. Ford?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Perez?
So I do have a few questions. One of them, so it was answered previously, but this differentiated plan is not included in the current budget that we approved. Do we have an idea of the amount that this differentiated plan will require?
Yeah, it'll be roughly $3 million when you look in whole at, you know, merging of federal funds and all federal funds, really.
Okay, now, not all of it will come from ESSER funds. Some of it will here and there.
So, yeah.
Within our budget for next year, what is our plan to cover this if we approve it?
Yeah, Penny can probably speak this much better than I can. Much of it is already what has been committed within the, within salaries for employees. So if there were a department head or they were a math and science teacher, et cetera, it's already been in their base salary. So as we go to budget, it's already in their base salary. So it's already budgeted for.
Okay, so that is no to what I said before. Is it in the budget we approved, but you're saying it was already budgeted?
Two different pieces. So I'm talking about two different pieces. So you've got, I want to be clear. You've got what we've always had in our, not always, but what is primarily carryover from our differentiated pay plan from years prior. And then we added layers to it, right, to work towards partnership network goals. The areas within the partnership network goals, we're going to fund out of federal funds. The other areas, we really make an account for within our general purpose budget. So it's already, it's already
in the general
budgeted,
purpose budget.
funded,
Okay.
and there's a pay structure for it to go forward. So there's no.
Okay, the second question actually has to do with the retirement benefit of unused leave, which I obviously, like, the concern is the ballooning of a payment 20 years from now that we're unprepared 20 years from now to cover, so.
Yeah, and that's budgeted because, you know, we have about the same number of retirements every year. So, you know, that's predictable and in the budget already. And the difference is if you retire by February 1st, it's $40 a day versus it's $20 a day if you just retire at any other time. And that helps incentivize folks to go ahead and let us know early so we can begin to post those
But
jobs.
it's not only for the year they retire, it's for the accumulated.
It's for their
all the-
accumulated sick leave, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, which could be, throw me a number, how many days?
It varies, you know, it could be 100 days, it could be 5 days, it just depends on the
So we
individual.
could be saying a bonus of about $4,000
Sure.
for a retiree. And are we accounting for it as a liability?
Yes.
During, okay.
Mhm.
So it's already accounted for? in
It's
our
already
budget.
accounted for, yes, and,
I had
you know, our
230
retirements
days.
are pretty predictable, so. Yeah.
All right.
Anyone else? Okay, Mrs. Ford?
Dr. Highlander?
Yes.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McClendon?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Chairman Wingate?
Yes. All right, brings us to board matters. You have there the board policies, and again, all of these are first read tonight. Dr. Towns, would you just want to, if you would, just humor me there and just kind of go over what you put in front of us, or what Ms. Murray put in front of us tonight, either one of you all, about the change to the child abuse policy?
Yes, I'll defer to Ms. Murray and Dr. Drake.
Okay.
So I can speak to the OJI policy. Oftentimes, we have teachers who are, say, restraining a special needs child and become injured in the course of that. And so we just wanted them to have the same rights and have the same insurance coverage that you would under the assault policy. Because, of course, you can't file assault on a special needs student or a kindergartner. So if you're injured throughout that process, then you would have the same rights as if it were an assault. So that's all.
And to explain that, so state law provides specific benefits for a teacher who is injured as the result of a student assault. It's different from sick leave. It's different from if we were under workers' comp, and we're not. So it basically is designed to hold the teacher harmless for an injury that is incurred dealing with a kid who assaults him or her. But the gap in our policy, really everywhere, is that if a teacher suffers the exact same injury because of an individual with special needs, and that special needs individual doesn't have the capacity to have committed an assault, so legally it's not an assault. Legally, the teacher's not entitled to the same kind of protection that the child that she would get if another student had committed the offense. And so this is designed to fill in that gap. There shouldn't be a difference that a benefits the teacher gets based upon what classroom the student is in. And frankly, what districts around the nation have run into from time to time is teachers will file assault charges against a special ed kid so that they get the benefits, and federal law says explicitly that you can't do that. So that hasn't been a problem here, but this is an effort by the board to take care of its teachers so that those teachers who sometimes are in the line of fire are taken care of.
So I have a quick question on page 2, starting with line 28. The additional language just saying that each school will designate a child abuse coordinator and an alternate child abuse coordinator, and then gives some criteria for those folks. So are we talking about classroom teachers? Are we talking about assistant principals, guidance counselors? Like who would?
We're on the next policy.
Yes, you're on the next one, but we're talking about, we're talking about the administrator of the building, and that's what they're called, but it's the administrator.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, that's language straight from the statute, and it recognizes that in some larger schools, there might be a designee. The General Assembly requires there to be a particular person, child abuse coordinator. In most, right, but in most situations, the principal will either fill that role, but we have in our policy, if the principal, if it's someone else, then the principal also needs to know as well.
Right, yeah, and they also have to keep they've got to keep a confidential file. So whenever we conducted the training, we asked that be the administrator in the building.
Could I say?
Go ahead, Dr. Highlander.
Can I say, Mr. Bennett, too, correct me if I'm wrong, the way I've read the law, and I have read it, there's a Good Samaritan clause for the teachers or the reporter that they cannot be held liable if they suspect. And so I just want to make that very clear.
That's true.
That our people know they are not in danger when they do that.
Yeah, if there's a good faith belief that that abuse has occurred, then they are held harmless against any kind of prosecution.
Right.
That's right. Good point, sir.
Clarify that.
Okay.
And they have a legal obligation to do it.
Yes.
All right, thank you for answering those questions there. Now that brings us down to the position request. The first one you'll see there is the ESOL Welcome Center and Outreach Facilitator. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
All right, Mrs. Thurman?
Yes, I just want everybody to realize that this is paid for out of ESSER funds, am I correct? And the people who will be hired for this position when the ESSER money is gone, that position will no longer exist, is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, let's clarify.
Yeah.
All right. So, yes, absolutely, ESSER funds. If we see that position has value and we can absorb it in our budget and it makes sense in our general purpose budget, we could potentially bring it forward. Now, that could mean any myriad of things. That could mean that we've got additional growth monies that we're able to absorb it with, or that could mean that the program is so effective that we need to go back and look and cut something else out of the budget to be able to fund that particular role. But if we can't fund it, it's gone. And if it's not effective, it's gone.
It'll come back to the board.
If it's going to be a general purpose funded position,
Right,
correct?
that's
Yeah,
what I mean.
absolutely.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
And,
Mrs. Hill?
Well, I, like Rhonda, wanted to point out that this is going to be paid for with ESSER two. And I'd like to just put the finer point on the fact that if it is effective, we will want to figure out how to continue to offer this service in our community. And you all will get tired of me because I'm going to remind us what money is ESSER two as often as I can until there is a fancy color or logo for it, as I have suggested.
Just make a chart, please.
Dr. Highlander, did you have something?
Sorry.
All right. Anyone else on that item? Okay, Mrs. Ford.
Dr. Highlander,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. McClendon,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. All right.
I did just want to make a quick comment. I just want to tell you thank you, tell the administration team thank you for creating this position. I think we're going to see great results from it, and it's been an impactful program at Howard High School, so thank you.
Next item there would be ESOL support specialist. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Did you get those, Ms. Ford? All right, Mrs. Hill.
Just want to make a point that this is being paid for with ESSER two money. Thank you.
Like, just make a chart, just make a chart.
And just to be clear, so everybody know, any position, the budget's approved, any position we bring forward at this point is gonna be almost ESSER funds.
Every bridge I see being built has a Tennessee Star logo on it.
Just,
Tell you what,
Just make a chart.
we need to remember this so that we don't forget it. I'm trying to come up with a good metaphor for the people of Hamilton County about this. The best that I've come up with was, it's sort of like you have an opportunity to move into a better apartment in a better, safer neighborhood. And at the end of 3 years, you either have to find more income or move out of the apartment with in the better, safer neighborhood and go back to where you came from. And Hamilton County is gonna have to decide 3 years from now if the progress we make is worth figuring out how to have more income. So,
Okay, Mrs. Ford.
Dr. Highlander,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
yes.
Mr. McClendon,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Next item there would be the driver safety support. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry.
Mr. McClendon,
Okay,
second.
thank you.
Mrs. Hill.
This is being paid for with ESSER two funds.
Mr. Perez.
So this, if I understood on Monday, is to help bus drivers with the COVID and contact tracing and so on and so forth. There is a, hopefully, though no guarantee, strong chance that through vaccination and reduction and all that, some of those things will go away, or perhaps not be as necessary and as demanding as they are right now. What is the plan, were that the case, and we've hired somebody to do that?
So, great question. Part of it is the contact tracing, but there are other parts about driver safety. I'll give an example. I had a conversation, and although she's not here right now, Miss Jones called about a specific stop that she didn't feel like was safe. And with the routing software, there are often times where, maybe an intersection has changed or something like that. So this person, it would be the one that could go put eyes on a stop, determine if it's a safe stop, and then provide some recommendations from there. So that's an added job responsibility that would be for this. So, as you know, in the past, we've requested positions such as this prior to COVID. This past year just raised the need to add this position. So hopefully next year, we're doing less contact tracing on buses, but this position will still be about driver safety.
Good. So to be clear, I believe, and I may be wrong, that I heard Ms. Hill say that this was ESSER funded.
It is, in fact,
Oh, okay,
ESSER
thank
funded.
you. So the thing is, kind of what I'm hearing here is this is a necessary position, that we're taking advantage of the fact that we have ESSER funds in order to hire for the safety of our students. But it seems to me imperative that, one, obviously we evaluate how necessary it is, but it sounds, I mean, safety is everyone's concern, so we'll want to make sure that we're looking at this one as well carefully.
All right, anyone else? Okay, Mrs. Ford?
Dr. Highlander?
Yes.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McClendon?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Chairman Wingate?
Yes. All right, under operations there, you'll see the memorandum of understanding for the Mechatronics Academy. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion about that item? Okay, Mrs. Ford?
Dr. Highlander?
Yes.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McClendon?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Chairman Wingate?
Yes. Next item there would be school security officers resolution. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion around that item. Go ahead, Dr. Highlander.
I believe this is, Tucker, this is your baby, and we all want more safety officers. We all want them. And I tell you what, I've talked to Sheriff Hammond. Sheriff Hammond wants them. But right now, they're really short, and I'm just saying, I want them badly. I have grandchildren, I have 3 grandchildren in the school system, and I want them to be safe. I truly do. I think we need to realize that we're operating at a disadvantage, as Mr. McClendon knows, I'm sure. And the sheriff, I will say, he said, Dr. Conner, I'm doing everything I can. You know, we can't let, so I want to say we need to go with this and do the very best that we can, and we need to ask and request and try to get it and do what we can. But on the other hand, we need to realize that we are in a really difficult time for police officers getting them in the system. Just that comment, I don't want us to throw him under the bus.
Mr. McClendon?
Yeah, so I've been pretty vocal about our SRO situation, and just working with Dr. Robertson and Dr. Corbin on this. Don't know if many of y'all caught it, but I guess they had a budget meeting, the county commission, on Tuesday, where SROs pretty much took over the conversation. And there seemed to be a lot of questions, and the county commission seemed willing to dig into it and look at it. You know, I think there is an issue with recruiting SROs right now, whatever that may be. And this program, these SSOs, are our gap to that our bridge to ensuring that we have someone in every school. We're talking about retired sheriff's deputies, retired police officers, retired military, retired park rangers, that really just are out of retirement and want to do something. The hours are great. You know, they get to be around children all day. And at the end of the day, they're providing an extra level of safety to our schools. So it's a pretty simple resolution. It's just asking the county commission to consider additional funding for the expansion of this program. Dr. Robertson, I think a SSO all in is about $65,000 a year. Maybe a little more the first year when you deal with everything.
Yeah, so first year, it's about 65,000. The recurring cost is about 6,000. I'm sorry, 60,000.
So it's considerably cheaper than an SRO. I think.
Same as an SRO.
Well, through training and things, I think the SRO, my numbers are going to be off, but $120,000 to $150,000. Yeah. But I think Commissioner Fairbanks, it kind of resonated with me as, you know, we can think of an SRO as a Cadillac and an SSO as a Chevy, but they're both going to be reliable and do basically the same thing, and that's provide safety to our students. So it's been a great program. I don't know if you've gotten to meet the officers in your schools, but I have several in mine. My one at East Ridge Elementary is phenomenal. That just comes to mind off the top of the head. So this is just asking them to consider funding, not pointing them in any direction or anything, but just asking them from our perspective to consider additional funding so we can make sure that we know where we are currently with the state of SROs and how many buildings do not have coverage, and hopefully we can get that to near 100%.
Mr. Perez?
So, there's more for the public, I believe. It's always the excuse when you don't understand something. Can you please explain the difference between an SSO and an SRO? You spoke to the commission when we presented our budget, and I thought it was really valuable to explain not only that there's a difference, but that there's also a value to both, and having SROs and SSOs in the system.
So I think the easiest way for my understanding to think about it is the biggest difference is the SRO is a sworn officer, and SSOs are more like armed security guards. I do want to provide some clarifying statements for what's been said publicly. Just to be clear, our SSOs are going through the same training in terms of preparation for the job. They don't go to the police academy, but they go through same training from there. We're requiring 40 hours a year in training, and one of the reasons a year and a half ago that we hired Jim Corbin as our coordinator is because his job prior to it was training SROs. He trained all of the current SROs that we have in our county, went through training with Dr. Corbin. And so that is the, what I would say is the biggest difference between the two in terms of, just an everyday understanding. They're both monitoring the perimeter of the school. They're both monitoring the interior, cafeterias, common spaces in the classrooms. We did not this past year allow SSOs to do lessons in classes. The example I gave is like during Bike Safety Week, a lot of times SROs will go in and talk about how to put a helmet on safely, rules of the road for bicycles. We did not allow our SSOs to do that this year just because it was our first year in the program. We wanted to make sure we got off to a great start. We will be doing some of that next year with our SSOs.
And let me add to that, and because of the fact that they are not officers or police officers, the SRO, that's where the both of them coming together as, you may need to call upon an officer to come in and take care of a situation that an SSO won't. I won't push back against Commissioner Fairbanks or you, but I do want the community to know we're not choosing a lesser option. We're just combining options in order to have all of our students, once again, safe and secure within the schools. So,
Mr. President, and to that point, most of our SSOs are formerly sworn officers, so they have the same basic training that they would have if they had gone through a law enforcement training program and have been post-certified. In terms of a situation where you need someone right then, right there, they're going to have the same basic skill set. Legally, the difference between an SRO and an SSO, as Dr. Robertson said, the SRO is an employee of a law enforcement agency. He's a sworn officer, and he has arrest powers. An SSO does not have the arrest powers.
can detain for a moment.
Right. But even there,
Yeah.
Dr. Corbin and I have kicked around, that there is a possibility, if the sheriff wanted to commission these folks as special deputies, then they could have arrest powers. But that's one of those things that we've sat around and thought about in the world of what ifs. That would be some liability that the sheriff would have to be willing to take on. And I can certainly understand why he would want to do that, because these are not people he's supervising.
And I can understand why we wouldn't want to do that as well.
Exactly, that's right, because that then puts us into a different constitutional classification. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
I always get a little bit nervous when I see the sentence, go to the county commission to ask for more money. It makes me a little nervous. Right. Hell, I understood that the sheriff, and he's probably gonna get real mad at me for asking the question I'm about to ask.
You're gonna roast him Monday.
I'm gonna roast him anyway Monday, but as a part of his budget, that, you know, that he makes his request to the commission, is to provide a certain number of SROs
Yes.
to the county school system. That's part of his budget. So, will he continue to get that monies, or if he can't get the officers?
Sounds like that's for the commission to
Justin and lights
decide.
Mike up on that one, so I guess that one's for me.
I'll
We don't know, to be honest. I mean, that's gonna end up being a county commission question. It's beyond, you know, we couldn't answer that. Now, I do know, and you know, historically, I guess it's been 3 or 4 years ago now, when Parkland happened, we put in our budget to hire, I think at the time it was maybe 7 school resource officers, and we were going to fund, in addition to what the sheriff's department was funding, we were going to fund the additional school resource officers. Maybe that first year we got a few of them staffed, but it's just the way hiring's been for the sheriff's department. They've never been able to get those fully staffed, so, you know, that's when we pivoted the funds over to the SSO program. So, you know, I couldn't speak, and it wouldn't dare try to speak on behalf of the commission.
Well, what makes me a little nervous, we're gonna go to the commission and ask for additional funds, that's what this says, right? But if they're already giving the sheriff's department funds to provide that help, that makes me a little nervous.
I'll
But the
tackle it.
sheriff's not doing his job.
Well,
Filling the
it's not
spot,
that he's not
right?
doing his job, he just can't find the people.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't have anything to do with him not doing his job.
So, this went through my thought process when I was coming up with this resolution and talking to Scott and some county commissioners. I think one approach they could take, and this is why I did not get into the details on this, because ultimately it's their decision, and they can say yes or no to this, and that's it. But one thing that someone, I can't remember which commissioner threw out, is I think the current number of SROs, that's what we keep it at, so he doesn't have to go out and recruit and retain more SROs. And the commission, however they do it, that's not in our purview, they go and find additional funds if we want to expand it for 10 to 20 to 30 to make us 100%. So it's not in our court, it's kind of putting the ball in their court and saying, personally, I want the SRO program to continue, and it's a hybrid, it's a partnership, but the commission might see fit a different way. I know the sheriff has requested 101 positions. If he gets his SROs back, then that takes a chunk of that. That's not for me to decide, and I don't care how that's settled. This is saying that we value SSOs or security officers in our school, and we need to be at 100%. And we're asking them to find a way, if they can, to fund it. They might not be able to. I would like to point out, back when I was towing the log on this, I guess 2 years ago when this whole thing started, I don't know if I ever said it publicly, and I don't know if my fellow board, we're the only major school district that does not have 100% coverage in their schools. Nashville, Memphis, or Shelby County, Rutherford County, Williamson County, Knox County, they're all at 100%. Knoxville right now is a little iffy. They were going through things with their SROs, but we are the only county, major county in this state that does not have 100% coverage in their schools, with either sheriff's deputies, cops from cities in their counties, or security officers. So that's where this comes from. We're lagging behind in this greatly, and so I think we've never formally, besides additional SRO requests in our budget, asked for them to fund it to a proper level. But how they do that, that's not in our purview, and they can decide how they want to do it. But, you know, I think on Tuesday, if you have not watched the budget hearing on Tuesday, they were coming up with ideas, and it was a great conversation. And this was already kind of in the works before that, and it just kind of was perfect timing. But to your point, Mr. Smith. I think it's how they want to proceed with it, and if it's cutting it off where they currently are, so he doesn't have to put that effort into recruiting more SROs, and that additional funds come to us, or that he goes still with the sheriff and we get more additional funds to do this. I don't know how they want to proceed with that, and frankly, that's not for us to decide. That's for them to decide.
Hang on one second, Mr. Press.
Just quickly, having been at the budget meeting with Dr. Highlander and then reading, I didn't get to hear the commission meeting. They want an answer to this as well. It was very clear to me at the budget meeting that a lot of questions came up during the budget meeting, which had nothing to do with the budget we were presenting regarding this. So if there's ever a moment to go to the commission, to me, and say, is when they're saying, how are we going to do this? Because they're as interested as we are in all of our students being safe. So I see it, I agree, I don't know how they're gonna do that, but what I understand, and I hadn't seen this till it was put in front of me, what I understand of this is we're just going to them saying, as they heard from Dr. Robertson, this system is working, and there's more, it's easier to hire under this system for various reasons. So we're just saying, can the commission consider that?
Well, I mean, so what we're moving to really is having our own security system, like some of these other ticket systems you mentioned. You say they got SROs, it's their SROs.
Well, no, it's most of them are a hybrid. So Shelby County will use partly from Shelby County Sheriff's and a security system.
It would seem to me that and it may be that the sheriff says, I wish y'all would take it all, was he involved in any of these conversations when you put this together?
So, I mean, not really. Me and him have talked, and I mean, I think, unfair to him or fair to him. I mean, he's had a target on his back for 3 years with this, and I think it's probably no fault of his own that it's just hard to find SROs. Or he finds someone, and like he said on Tuesday, they only want to do 3 to 4 years in a school system, so they start all over again. And so I think, I don't know how he feels about SSOs, and frankly, at the end of the day, all I care about is that we have an extra layer of security in our schools.
I don't think nobody disagrees with that.
Yeah, and so, I mean, we've talked, and Dr. Corbin and Dr. Robertson talked to him, and I think he's been kind of briefed on this a little bit. But I don't think
I would just be more comfortable agreeing to this resolution if he was comfortable with it, because he's a player in it. And so I'm good with all of it.
I will say, though, and he is a player in it, but if he can't hire the current number of budgeted SROs, he's not going to get us to 100%.
I understand.
And so that's what this is trying to do, is we have a system that's working, that we've started out kind of small with at first, and the interest that I've talked to Dr. Corbin that we have, people are like, if you get more funding for this and you can hire me, I want to come on. It just seems like it's too good not to try to pursue and get some support on the commission side.
Again, and I'll hush, but still not knowing the monies that he is receiving to supply us with SROs that he can't supply us with because he can't get folks. So where's that money?
Well, great question. Yeah, it's a great question. I
So,
think
hang
my question.
Hang on one second. Hang on.
I mean, can he give it back to the school? Give it back to the commission, let the commission get it back to us? That's what I need to.
So that's not for us to decide, though.
Yeah.
We're
just simply asking for the conversation to start.
That's for when, if this passes tonight, that officially will start this conversation, I think, on the county commission. They had that conversation on Tuesday. I think, and this is going to be off the top of my head, I think the total SRO, and Dr. Robertson might know this more than I will, but I think his budget for SROs is roughly $4 million-ish.
I'm not sure about the total budget. I think they're budgeted 38 or 40, and he had requested 2 more. Currently, they're staffed at 24.
So, I mean, I get what you're saying, because, I mean, but we don't have control. I mean, our budget has to get approved by the commission just like his budget. So at the end of the day, they have final say, and if they pull his money, then they pull it. If they don't, then they don't. That's just not for me to decide, and I don't want any part of that. I just want to say, will you please look at how we fund this? Whether it is through new dollars, through their unbudgeted balance, or is it through the sheriff's budget? I don't know, and that's not for me to decide.
Mr. Thurman.
Yeah, I did exactly the same question that Joe had, you know, about the money. I don't know why the sheriff wasn't asked about that. Ask how much money do you have that you're not spending for SROs? How much is available? Maybe somebody could have found that out before doing this. I don't know, I just have a problem with that, not bringing all the players to the table. I just don't want Sheriff Hammond to think that we're, you know, kind of going over his head or behind his back or whatever. I just don't want him to have that feeling at all.
I mean, I will say on the grand scale of things, I mean, I understand that he is a player, but this is outside of his purview. Schools security officers are under our purview. They're under Dr. Corbin. So this would be additional people, in my mind, to his SRO program. So I don't want us to get confused that he oversees this SSO program, because he doesn't.
So, and just one point of clarity as well, when we initially started, our goal was to have every middle school and every high school covered. And then we were gonna take the SSOs and spread them out of the learning communities to help cover elementary schools, housing them at the largest elementary school in that particular learning community. But because we've never been able to really get fully ramped up and staffed on the other side, and then we did add 3 more SSOs into our budget, because we've never been able to ramp up and get fully staffed. We've never really been able to be at that point, and then we all know, you know, this year just what's happened in regards to the jail and such. So, the gold standard, and we were asked this question at the county commission when we presented the budget. We asked, well, what's the gold standard? And the gold standard would be to have a safety personnel that's highly trained in every building. The gold platinum standard would be to have an SRO, you know, in every single building. And so that would be the ultimate.
Mrs. Robinson.
Yeah, got a lot of thoughts. They kind of gone in and out of my head now because it's 8 o'clock at night. I agree with Tucker on this, that this is a conversation starter, that I think it's pretty imperative that we try to kick this football across, you know, down the field, or whatever those sports terms are. Yeah, I don't know. I was a cheerleader, but I could never make a call. I could never call the cheer, so because I didn't know what was going on in the game.
Let's start the back handspring.
Yep. So exactly. Anyways, I think that if I were the sheriff, I would honestly feel empowered by this, because I feel like opening up this dialogue creates an opportunity for him to say, hey, I want to figure out the right way to get this done with the commission and the school board, or to say maybe it's time to change how this is structured and the way that this need is met, because there absolutely has been an issue for the last few years getting the need met. And I remember there was one school year where Jill and I were making phone calls back and forth just to trying to get SROs into a number of my schools. And I think that when I think about the things that we should be focused on the most, it is, school safety is right up there at the very top of the list. I can't imagine feeling good if we ever had a real serious incident happen in our schools and we all were able to say, yeah, but yet there was another, there was $1.5 million sitting there unused because we couldn't find people to hire. It just feels like one of those situations where it is time to rip the Band-Aid off, and it is time to possibly disrupt the system to make change that's necessary. When we talk about being competitive as a school system, I talk to parents all the time about why they may or may not take their kids out of our schools, and I can't compete on the security level as like a Baylor or Macaulay or a GPS. And I know that this being in a board seat is not about comparing ourselves to public or comparing ourselves to private schools, but let's just be really honest here. Like, that's the elephant in the room. Like, we are always being compared by other options, and maybe homeschool is an option, and security and safety on a parent's list of why they choose to not send their kids to Hamilton County schools. It's just not acceptable to me. And frankly, I don't want to participate as a parent if I don't have that kind of level of security either. So I think that the sheriff is absolutely doing his job. I think this is really hard, and I think that the way that the county's done this for decades, it needs to be rethought. And I think that this document is a conversation starter, and I think it's imperative that we start that conversation.
Mrs. Hill.
I agree that the safety of our students it's our responsibility. And I'm not convinced by everything that has happened over the last 3 years that the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office is able to be or wants to be a reliable partner for us. And I have held my tongue for years. But as we are now discussing, do we hurt anybody's feelings? Are we getting on somebody's toes? I'd like to read to you all what Sheriff Hammond said about one of my schools and ask you how you would feel if he said this about one of your schools. This was on April 26th when he chose to, I guess, speak to Roy Exum. And it was about an issue in a school that it's not really his place to judge the value of what was happening. It's his place to keep that school safe. He says, if the School for Creative Arts so desires, I have other uses for a very, very fine sheriff's deputy. And if he is harassed by the principal or students, I would be happy to reassign this officer and let Chattanooga School for the Creative Arts handle the messes they create. Chattanooga School for the Creative Arts is a, quote, city school. So maybe the city council can advise the principal. That is a dereliction of duty, in my opinion. And I'm not okay with him being so cavalier with the safety of students in District 6, and I would hope that you all would feel the same. I don't even hope it, I'm certain that you would feel the same if students in your district were being spoken of in such a completely disrespectful manner. As an officer of the law, their job is to protect those students. They don't have to agree with what those students think, but in the same way that the officers are going to protect each of us for our free speech, it's their job to take care of the students in that school. And the fact that he says that officers don't want to stay more than 3 to 4 years, 2 to 3 years, whichever one it is, he stood in front of us when he recommended that we arm teachers as a way to handle this problem. He stood in front of us and said one of the reasons why people don't want to stay SRO officers is because it negatively impacts their career track. Well, you want to know who can make a decision about how a person's career track is shaped? The person that runs the organization. You can incentivize things, like how we've just voted on an incentivized pay plan. We want you to go to hard places. If you're the best teacher in Hamilton County, we're ready to pay you 20% more because we need you where our students need you the most. We could be incentivizing school resource officers and say, if you want to grow your career, we expect every single officer who qualifies to perform 2-year service in our schools. That is an expectation because Hamilton County students matter that much to our community. But he has not done that. So I was actually really glad to see this on my desk tonight, and I give you all my full support. And to me, if I were the fiduciary in this situation, I would say, here's a pile of money that I've been giving to an office in my county that has not been used, that has been buried in the sand. And I'm going to take it out of the sand and I'm going to put it to good use.
Do you have something else, Mr. McClain?
No, I just want to kind of reiterate that I think Tiffany, Ms. Robinson said it the best. It's a conversation starter. We all know that we lag behind in this area. And I mean, the county commission could get this from us and they could do nothing with it, and that's their right, or they can, work with us to find a solution. And so I think that's the ultimate goal of this, is just to get this conversation to a bigger stage and in the limelight, so we can really start to talk about it, because at the end of the day, I mean, we are talking about protecting our students. And that's, besides giving them an excellent education, that's the second most important thing to me when they walk into our schools every day.
Before we vote, I'll just say, I have had some limited conversations with some folks in the sheriff's department, and I have found that they have been supportive of this program in the times that I have been able to speak with those folks. And what I've found in my district where schools have security officers is there's a difference there when it comes to the hiring. So where the sheriff may be struggling to find SROs and also those to work as corrections officers, he is in a different pool somewhat than those that we have hired, or at least the ones that are working in my district as school security officers. Many of the ones that work in my district are retired. That they've had distinguished careers in some other form of law enforcement, as we've already said, in the military, in a municipality, at the state level, whatever it is. And so I don't think that there's any misunderstanding. It's just my opinion from conversations I've had between what we want and what they want. I think that the sheriff's pool, and again, what he's trying to attract and who he's able to try to recruit, I think is somewhat, not completely, but somewhat a different pool of folks than the ones who would have interest in what we have to offer as far as this program. So just an observation again from kind of what I've seen in my district and also kind of the conversations that I've had. So, Mr. Thurman.
Joe, I absolutely agree with you. I've been on the school board a long time, and every time with the SRO program, the sheriff has just absolutely supported it wholeheartedly, as well as the SRO officers, and I will not disrespect them in any way. A lot of times things happen at school that draw things to the point where they came. I will not say that he does not care about students and this kind of thing. That is just wrong. And so my vote about this is going to be because I just think there needs to be a little bit more conversation with him. Not that he has a player in this, just to find out about the money, how much money is there. I mean, we don't have to have a resolution to ask the county commission how much money, did the sheriff get for our SRO officers, and has he used it all? I mean, they keep track of that money as well. So, but I just don't like the whole tone that the sheriff's not doing his job and all this kind of stuff, and it has led us to this point. I'm just not going to support that at all. It's not right and it's not fair, and we may end up finding ourselves having to find some more other officers besides SRO officers if we continue this attitude. It's just not, it's not cool.
Mr.
It's not good.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money is left out of the SRO program. And I'm going to say this, I live with a cop, so hear me out. I want the SRO program to stay. Every single day that it's not fully staffed, and this is something, fully staffed versus full coverage is something totally different. So we're talking about being fully staffed, which I think he's fully staffed is 42 for him, and we know how many schools we have. So this is just a conversation starter, because I think it's just a ticking time bomb on something happening in our district. We saw what happened in Knoxville. We had a gun in one of our schools last week that did not have an SRO or an SSO in the building. Luckily, it was right next to Central, and they do have an SRO. But I think it's any time wasted on even having a conversation is time lost, in my opinion.
Mr. Smith.
Well, but you just said this was a conversation starter. I think that's what I heard you say. That's what this will do, is help you start the conversation. Listen, I hear you. We gotta fix this. I got it. We don't disagree at all. I'm just wondering, do we have to have a resolution to have a conversation?
I think if you want my honest opinion, yes. Because if not, it's gonna happen on cell phones between us and commissioners and this and that and the sheriff.
Yeah.
And I want this to happen on the dais of the county commission. As a formal request.
Yeah.
This is not requesting, there's not a dollar sign. They can say, we're not gonna do this, or we're gonna give you $3 million to fully fund it, whatever that number is. But yeah, I'm tired of having to deal with county commissioners and the sheriffs, on cell phones and talking and emails, going back and forth with Dr. Corbin. How many SROs do we have this week? How many are being pulled? I will say, out of the 24 that we have, they're being pulled every day out of that 24 to go do transports and stuff. I totally get the position the sheriff is in. They had the gel thrown at them with Core Civic backing out. I understand
thrown
it.
at 'em.
But I want this as a formal request so it gets publicly discussed on the dais of the county commission. And whatever they do with it, whether they love it, they hate it, that's up to them. But I want this board to say, we value school security, and we don't need to wait on the number, we don't need to wait on the conversation. That can happen publicly. I really wish that I should have told everyone to watch it, but the discussion they had on Tuesday was the best discussion around school security that I had seen in a long time in this district. And that is what made me hopeful. And I've talked to county commissioners, and they were looking forward to getting this on their desk. So I do hope that we support it. There is no dollar amount linked to this. It is just a conversation starter that will happen publicly on the county commission and allow them to talk about it.
Dr. Highlander, did you have something?
Yes, sir, if I could. I understand what Ms. Thurman's saying, and I do not want to disrespect our sheriff's department. I do not. Because I've had several talks, and I mean, I think, I'm sure people disagree with me. Everything I've had with Sheriff Hammond, he was very interested in trying to help us, but he's sort of between a rock and a hard place. And I plan to vote for this because I do want to see the commission, and I listened to the audio of that. Mr. Perez and I went to the budget presentation, then I listened to the audio of it, and it was very stimulating conversation. Thank you, Tucker, I agree with that. But I tend to support this, but this is not an anti-sheriff's department vote for me.
Not at all.
Because it is
Yeah,
not.
absolutely.
And I just want to make that clear that
Not
it's
for me
not.
either.
I appreciate what every one of our officers has done as far as keeping safety, and I want us to have more. And I want my 3 grandchildren and every other single child in this county to be safe. And so I'm open to opening, that's fine, I'll vote for it as an opener to conversation, but not as a criticism. That's my vote, thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Tucker, I'll support this, because I'm with y'all on, we gotta fix it. I just wish it'd been handled a little bit differently, than what we did, and I too, just is upsetting to me to devalue, Sheriff Hammond in any way. So I'll support this. I just wish it'd been handled a little bit different.
I just want to know, just so I can understand, what would you have liked to, what would you have
For
want,
him to been more involved in the discussion.
like, come to this meeting, or Tucker have called him? I just want to better understand what, like,
But
a perfect
what
situation looks
I
like.
asked if he was involved in the discussion, and Tucker said no. And I think just perhaps give him that respect. And we gotta do something right now, Sheriff, and here's what we plan to do.
I think the reason that I didn't have a formal conversation is because this isn't in his purview, although he is in the school security business.
I understand that. I understand
Now, if
that.
it would have been, hiring more SROs and doing that definitely needs to be a conversation. But then again, how do you have a conversation with someone when you don't know what the solution's going to be? So I can just say, hey, I'm doing this resolution, and that's about as all I can say. It's up to the county commission on what they do. So I understand, and I completely respectful to that, and this is not in any way a bad mark towards the sheriff in any way possible. I just want school security to be fully
We all
funded.
do.
We all do. And that makes this publicly, with this board, with the commission, with the conversation. So I understand what you're saying, but I also think there's not a way to really have a conversation without just saying, hey, I'm doing a resolution. But what's the solution? He told the commission that he can't hire anyone. He's trying every single day. And I don't know where else there is except to find a solution in this that has worked for the district so far and that we can expand it.
One more quick thing. I've been on this board a long time, and we never had to go do resolutions, just talk gentlemen to people and just ask them a question. I have all their cell phone numbers right here. I don't have a problem with picking up the phone and saying, hey, in your budget, did you use all the money we gave the SROs? Simple enough. That's, I just don't understand why we have to have a resolution and do all of this thing when we just can just have a gentleman-to-gentleman conversation and figure it out and do this. I'm sorry, I guess I'm old school. I'm not used to having to put everything in writing to be sure that everybody is so formal and all this stuff, when we all have to get along And our goal is the same, is to educate these students and keep them safe. And I just don't, I mean, maybe that's the younger generation's way of doing things. It's just not a thing I'm comfortable with.
I don't think it
Have
has
put
anything to
everything
do
in
with my
writing.
age.
Well,
But I do think that Dr. Robertson and Dr. Corbin have had active conversations with the sheriff, and we haven't been able to solve the problem. So when I ask,
I mean, hey, listen, I wish I was your age. It'd be great, but I'm not. So there's nothing against your age.
I'm tired of calling up county commissioners or the sheriff or Dr. Robertson and saying, how do we solve this?
I think that this is how governing bodies communicate with each other, and I think it's actually important that this board start doing more of this because, I mean, Scott, you could probably speak more to this. Like, why do governing bodies put together resolutions, and what is the purpose behind it?
Well, fundamentally, it's just the board's position on an issue of policy. I mean, it's the board formally saying, this is what we think is important. And so the board speaks as a whole rather than 9 people having, conversations off to the side, which might be off the record.
All right.
Call for question.
Are we ready for a vote here? Go ahead, Mrs. Ford.
So if this passes, I need for everyone who votes for it to sign off on this before you leave tonight, please.
So you'll have the one copy?
Yes,
If
sir.
it passes?
Right here.
Okay.
If it passes. Dr. Highlander?
Yes.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McClendon?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
No.
Chairman Wingate?
Yes. All right, that brings us to discussion and vote on a mask mandate. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
Second.
We're just approving that we're gonna discuss it?
And possible vote, yes.
Uh,
Hang on, did you get those?
Yes,
Mrs.
I
Ford?
did.
All right, so discussion, please.
Okay, the first thing that I would like to do is like to get a little bit of clarification. School-age childcare is part of the, these are questions that I get all the time. A part of the, what is the rules in there, are there same rules? Have they been supposed to be applied like to kindergarten through second, didn't have to wear a mask? There was all kinds of confusion. It seemed like no one ever knew what was going on. The 4th and 5th graders didn't know why they had to wear a mask. 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders didn't know why they had to mask, and the small kids didn't have to when they were all in the same room doing all the same thing. Total confusion all the time. Some school-age child cares were making kids wear a mask outside. Others weren't making them wear a mask outside. Also, I just need a little bit of clarification about that. Also, buses. I've been told that some of the buses are under Department of Transportation. Is that correct? No, well, they're under our purview, correct? Well, some, I've talked to about 7 school boards today, and they were under the impression that maybe they were under the Department of Transportation, and that's why it was mandated they wear masks, but they're not, so they're under our purview, so that's up to us as well, correct? Okay, that's what I thought, but we seem to have a little bit of difference with some of the other school boards around us in Tennessee. And also about graduations. And these are just things I just need to know and say it, and I hate that we're so late into this tonight, but graduations, I know our graduation with at Saudi Daisy High School is going to be at Finley Stadium. And is there a limit on the amount of people they can have? Okay, well, given the fact that it's outdoors and stuff, I'm not real sure why we have to have a limit on that. A lot of parents and a lot of other people would like to go to the graduation, and you could put everybody in Saudi Daisy just about in Finley Stadium. I mean, without too much trouble. So I don't understand, why we have to have a limit when they're outdoors. And also, by the way, Sale Creek will be graduating on their football field, first thing in the football field this year. But I don't understand why, and some people up there are very upset because that's the first thing to happen in that stadium, and they're being limited how many people can come. And if it's outdoors, I'm just not real sure why that's the case. But anyway, can you just clear it up about school-age child care? And another thing that a lot of people don't understand, a lot of people are not going to school-age child care because of the mask mandate, because they have been making some of their kids wear a mask outside. What some of these board members may not understand is that school-age child care is a big moneymaker for us. we make about $400,000 a year off of school-age childcare. And it has fallen off so dramatically. A couple of things have happened. Number one, because so many kids kept getting in trouble because, I mean, I know my grandson was one of the ones that got in trouble for trying to play his tablet with another boy because they weren't supposed to touch the same screen. And he ended up getting written up for that. My granddaughter got written up because she buried her mask out in the mulch. You know, I mean, really, is this the kind of thing you punish your kids for this nonsense? I don't think so. But anyway, so we need to get the rules straight so parents know the rules, and also we have not allowed some schools to have school-age child care on some of our biggest schools. I take Wallace A. Smith, for example, that had the largest school-age child care center that we had, and we've allowed the administration there to say they don't want it there, which is a huge mistake in my opinion. But anyway, like I say, we're losing a lot of money on school-age child care. And a lot of it is because of the mask mandate and because we've been such sticklers about some of these things, and the kids have to wear masks playing in the gym. And also, I don't know about buses. I just need some clarification. I think the public needs some clarification. So in order to keep from having to have that clarification and to keep from all of this nonsense from these kids having to deal with this, this is what I would like to do. Dr. Johnson, you said you were going to lift the face mask requirement for grades 3 through 12 on June 1st. I said the grades 3 through 12 because the face mask requirement for pre-K through 2 was lifted back in February. As late as last week, pre-K2 students in most schools were still required to wear a mask. I had a parent tell me last week they requested for their 5-year-old to be mask-free. The parent told her daughter she no longer had to wear a mask in her classroom. The student told her teacher that her mother had called the school to say she no longer wanted to wear her mask in her classroom. When the student told her teacher this, the teacher told her, "If you do not put your mask on, you will go to the principal." This child has been so afraid she refuses to take her mask off to this day. This is a form of bullying, in my opinion, and I personally do not like it. I am still not sure why communication from the central office took 3 months to be implemented in our elementary schools. I've asked you, Dr. Johnson and Scott as well, for medical studies to back the decision to continue forcing students to wear facial barriers. I was not given any hard facts. I was told that masks have helped us in school without any real proof that they have. It is only 9 more days of school, I've been told. Why not just leave it? Because there are 9 more days of school, why don't you all just leave it and let the kids be free for 9 days at the end of the school year? I was told by bringing the mask issue up that I was undermining Dr. Johnson, and that is not my intent at all. My intent is to try to find out where the rest of the board is on this. I don't know what discussions you've had with Dr. Johnson. This is the only way I know to find out where everyone stands, is to have a discussion with the school board, and I'm here to represent the students. So if you feel like I'm undermining you, I'm sorry, but I'm here to represent the students and the parents. Some articles supporting masks were provided by one of the board members. I read each one of the articles. One of them stated there is insufficient evidence to provide recommendation on the use of facial barriers without other measures. Some of the articles contradicted each other. One said masks do not restrict oxygen, and later in the article it said do not put masks on very small children or handicapped individuals as the mask may restrict their oxygen intake. Well, which is it? Most of these articles are pertaining to adults and not children. Most were dated April, May, and June of 2020. Things have changed a lot since 2020. Back in 2020, we were told children were super spreaders. They are not. Back in 2020, we were told to lock down everything and stay in our homes, forcing closing of parks, ball fields, boat ramps, hiking trails, and playgrounds. We now know the CDC has been forced to admit that being at home was the worst place we could have possibly been, and the outside has less than a 1% transmittal rate and is the safest place to be. I hope we've learned more about COVID now than we knew 12 or 13 months ago. Facts have changed, but we have not. When researching articles about masks on children, I found out there are literally hundreds of them. So you can back up any argument either for or against face mask requirements with a scientific study. So I decided to do my own scientific study. I called surrounding county school boards to ask their what their face mask requirements were. Ray County said they never had a face mask requirement. Bradley never had a face mask requirement. Dade never had a face mask requirement. Cumberland County have a face mask requirement and had more cases than they did in Ray. McMinn said they were optional. Meigs said they were optional. I checked news stories and could not find any major breakout in any of these school systems, any of the school systems who never had a face mask requirement. I have been sent pictures of filthy face masks found by teachers and bus drivers on the ground. There is no way these things are healthy. There was a time if my daughter had strapped a handkerchief soiled with mucus, dirt, and sweat around my granddaughter's nose and mouth and forced them to wear them, she would have been arrested for child endangerment. Now these nasty cloths are called masks, and the school system is requiring my grandchildren to wear them. And then we talked earlier about the social emotional learning. How do you think that affects children to have to wear those nasty things around their face all day? June 1st is the deadline Governor Lee gave the mayors to end their mandates. Mayor Coppinger has already ended the one in Hamilton County. It is time we as a board ended our face mask requirement and allow parents to make the decision for their children. Students are playing baseball, basketball, bowling, fishing, skating, going to family get-togethers, birthday parties, and anything else they want to do without a mask. It is time we stop forcing students to wear masks in school for no reason other than just because we can. All students and support staff have been given several opportunities to get a vaccine. Children are at a very low risk of contracting or transmitting COVID, and then there's also herd immunity. I can find no scientific reason to force children to continue wearing masks for one more day. I do, and like I say, I just need the clarification about the others. If this does not pass, but if it does, it's not necessary. Some parents have told, some board members have told parents that the decision on wearing face masks is up to Dr. Johnson. That is not true. With 5 votes, we can make the front door the back door. We can do whatever we want to do with 5 votes. This is our decision. Therefore, I'm making a motion to make face masks optional for parents and students in pre-K through 12 starting tomorrow.
Second.
Which motion did we have a second ago? We had a motion and a second already, correct?
No.
Was that to
That was just to have discussion.
No.
Well, actually, I don't think we had a motion.
No, we didn't have a motion.
Yeah, I think when you called it, there was, someone said motion and second, but I don't think there was actually a motion on the table.
Okay, now we have a motion and a second. All right, do we have, I see some cups already out, so for discussion, this is what I have. I have Mr. Perez and Mr. Smith, and then I'll get Dr. Highlander.
So this is less in response to what you said, Ms. Thurman, because I do hear you say that you didn't mean any disrespect, and I believe that. So
I didn't get elected
no,
to
I
the
know.
school board
So-
to represent him.
Yeah, so this is less to that, but it may come out like that, so that's why I'm being cautious. But I do want to state, and I think we all probably agree here, deep gratitude to everybody on our staff. Because this, as we all know, as we said 20 times throughout this year, has been the most difficult year probably in education around the world, not just this country. All of you were put in a position of having all of our teachers, all of our administrators, our janitorial services, everybody was put in a position of having to deal with the most difficult circumstances without really a manual, and everything changed every day. Every month, every couple months, there was new information, and we had to adapt to that. And I want to thank you as a parent. I want to thank you as a board member now, because I think you have done a phenomenal job. And I've said often to many people, I think what Hamilton County has done will probably be spoken of and written of. I do believe firmly there was no hidden agenda, no underlying purpose other than we want to have students in school as much as possible for as long as possible, keeping students safe, keeping parents safe, keeping teachers safe, and ensuring the continuation of school. And I think the evidence has shown that we were able to do that very well compared to many places around the country where they weren't even, until recently, one of my cousins put, my kids are going to school, you know, and for the first time in the year. So I want to make that clear because I think, you know, unfortunately, some of these things bring attacks in our community. I want to place my position, and I actually think it's probably the position of the whole board, that I am deeply grateful, and I'm thankful to all of you for that. I have had a question about, from the beginning, I said this in January or whenever this seemed like a discussion again, about laying all the authority on you, not because I didn't trust you, but because I believe it sets you up for attacks when the reality is, as a board, we are the ones who are placing that authority, and I think we also are responsible for that. So I want to be clear. I don't know medicine. I don't know science. I'm a finance guy, which is about as boring as it comes. I read a lot. I study a lot. But I think as a board, what we set was we were going to look to proper authorities to give us direction in these issues. And to me, proper authorities were chosen. They were chosen before my time, but I'm not in any way dismissing that. I could have fought it for 10 months or whatever, however long it's been. Feels like 20 years already. But we set authorities that we would trust. I do think, and I'm sure it can be made available, but our own legal counsel has stated that the long-term liability for this district and the risk that we play is most important to follow the CDC and the local health department and the Tennessee Department of Health through these things, and that's what we've done. I don't like masks. I hate them. I hate them every day. I don't know when I washed this one last, because at one point they just go in the car and it's the one mask that I grabbed. So sorry, don't get close to me. I don't like them on my children. I do think they take away from facial expressions and smiles. I am so thankful to hear that the CDC is announcing or announced today that if you've been vaccinated fully, that means 2 weeks after the second shot, if you're a 2-shot person, you will be able to. And now we've announced that 12 to 15-year-olds will also be eligible for vaccination, which means that I already was looking today, what do I do with my 15 and where do we go? But that'll still be 6 weeks if I went today before she was free. So for me, we're almost there. We're very close. I want to make it very clear. I'm deeply grateful. None of this has been easy. Nobody has had a hidden agenda. I'm deeply grateful. We're almost there. In January, we went through this. I was surprised that it was back on the agenda, but in January, we went through this. And to me, I wasn't passing the buck, because I would have, had I been given the same opportunity, I would have said, let's continue how we're doing. Because whatever it's doing, I don't know, we'll look 20 years from now and say, was this what worked or what was it that worked? I don't know, but we've been in school for so long, and I know that some schools are already having to deal with quarantines because the virus is still present. So thank you all. Thank you for your work, for your efforts. Thank you, because it's been a really tough year, and I hope we keep you all for years to come. I hope we keep our teachers. And I hope we keep our board members, because it's not been easy. And what I don't like, and I'll say this to the public in general, but I don't think I think we're all looking for the safety and well-being of our students and for the continuation of our schools. And you know, in the beginning, people were just as mad that we were going back to school. It's just been a really hard situation. So thank you all.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As issues come up, over the time that I've been on this board, 6 years now almost, I always try to gather my own thoughts, feelings, ideas about things, and then I want to listen to what the folks that elected me had to say, because they elected me to represent them. Most of the time, they line up. Sometimes they don't. But when they do not line up, and of course I wrestle, as we all would. I realize that perhaps some may consider this discussion and possible vote, the word I heard today, absurd, that we're even having the conversation. I heard that word today. Well, tell that to those people, I tell you, that this discussion and vote is absurd. Or to the, I don't know how many countless emails and texts that I've got and 41 personal phone calls. I don't think they think the conversation is absurd. It's been a tough year. It has. But in spite of this life storm that we've all been through, in spite of that, our superintendent, our staff, our building administrators, and especially our teachers have been amazing. They've been amazing that we've been able to navigate through this. You know, whether you want to wear a mask or take a mask off, we could find the data to back our position. I mean, we could find it. You know, Mr. Chairman, I just want to see, we have 9 more days. So the argument's been made, but let's just do 9 more days. Okay, we could do that. Yeah, we could do that. I would just love to see our kids have something to celebrate. I just would. And parents something to celebrate. And send the message to these kids that, you know what, maybe life's just about to get back to normal. Isn't that cool? So, and I'll say this, parental choice is never absurd. And you know, I want to say one final thing to all these that have came today and all the phone calls and texts that I've got. Man, I'd love to see this kind of passion at PTA meetings and coming and volunteering at our schools and working in our concession stands. And I'd love to see the kind of passion related to those things as I've witnessed to this mass thing. I absolutely am in support of Rhonda's motion. If for no other reason, I want our kids to have something to celebrate. It's been horrible. It's been horrible. There's not a bit of reason in the world that we can't let our kids take these masks off for a week and a half. So I'm going to support the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Highlander.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask, Ms. Thurman, may I ask you a couple of questions about the motion, the nature of it, if I may?
I tried to make it real simple so you
I think you
understand.
did, but I want to be sure. Well, you know how old history and English teachers are. They look for every little facet of it to change in the wording. We're not quite as bad as lawyers, but we're pretty close. Seriously, I guess this is for the public too. In your proposal, you're saying that a parent would make the choice for a child pre-K to 12, but the parent would choose to let them take the mask off or to keep the mask on.
Sure, they can let them wear 2 or 3 or the rest of them in hazmat suits. I don't care.
And then also the teachers, if the teachers felt like they had breathing troubles or asthma or whatever, if they'd had their shots, they would be free to take them off.
Well, sure. Even the
Okay.
CDC came
Or
around
if
today.
or if the teacher or the administrator felt he or she was in danger, they would have the right to keep them on. So it would be personal choice for the adults, parental choice for the parents for wearing it or not wearing it.
Yes, we are Americans. If they want to wear a mask, they can wear one. If they don't, they don't have to. It is their choice.
That's the way I understood it, but I wanted to be sure that it was clear. I wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. If you want to keep wearing a mask, keep wearing one. Nobody tells you to take it off.
I will say this.
You you graduate. I don't care.
In reference to what Mr. Smith said, I normally try to listen. I have had probably every bit as many texts, emails, and phone calls as you have. And I've sort of thrown out the ones that are doing that because they are very emotional. But I have in the past, I try to support my constituents. And if I absolutely know they're wrong, I will go against it. If I know they're wrong. But if I'm not sure, I really kind of let them guide me in what I'm going to do. So what I try to do is I try to reach out to 100 people. Well, I hadn't had time to reach out to 100. I've reached out to 39. And on both sides, I've looked at Harrison, Ooltewah, Birchwood, and Snow Hill. Those are basically my 4 communities. And mine are 80% wanting parent choice. And even some of those that want parent choice say, I want my child to wear a mask. But I think every parent has a right to have a choice. And I can understand that. I had several say, I said, you think parents have a choice? Yes. Are you going to have your child wear a mask? Yes, I am. But I think the ones that choose not to have the right to make the choice for their child. So that's what my constituents have come to me with. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McClendon?
So I've been referenced twice to Ms. Thurman's, the articles I sent her, because it was stated that there was no evidence that masks work, and there are, and there's evidence that they don't work. So like you said, you can make data say whatever you want, so let's say that. And then Mr. Smith, yeah, I called it absurd. And I didn't call it absurd because of the way, what you kind of initiated that I said it. I called it absurd because we could have voted on this in January, February, March, and April. And we are sitting here 10 days left, and we're voting on this. So yeah, I think it is absurd. And it's not absurd because of our parents that are here. They have every right to be here. And Ms. Robinson, she spoke last week, I don't think she's still here, or last month, I mean. She was engaged, and that's what it should be. But there's no reason this board could not have voted on this in January, February, March, or April. Yet we're here, 10 days, 11 days of school left, and we're voting on it. What was it?
9.
9 days of school left. So that being said, I hate masks. I am a 26-year-old healthy man. I don't need a mask. I am fully vaccinated at all. But I also think, to Ms. Thurman's point, you called counties around us that are small. Knoxville's still requiring masks. Williamson County, there's been a lot of disinformation out there about that case. Montgomery County, Rutherford County, and Wilson County.
They're not around here. I just call the ones that were around here.
And
Those are irrelevant to me.
Hang on. Let's go ahead and finish.
And they're irrelevant in geography, but not population. So I struggle with this because if this was presented to me in April or March or February, I probably would have supported it. But I'm so tired of these damn things being decisive. Decisive, whatever they are. Divisive, decisive. It's 9 o'clock at night, folks.
It's late. It is late. It's bedtime, y'all. We've already discussed Tucker's age.
It is a piece of cloth. And what I hope we were talking about tonight is that we have been in school more than any other large district in this state. That we have led the way in the country in reopening. That we provided Wi-Fi to 20,000 students in our county?
What does that have to do with masks?
Because it's how we reopened. And I know you can sit over there and you can say stuff under your breath, but I have the floor and I don't do that to you.
I said, what does that have to do with masks?
Because I have the floor. So if you don't like what I'm saying, you can either get up and leave or not.
Wow.
Well, this is where we are in the state. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. We're talking about this right here. And we got people screaming and they have every right and banging and I hate this thing. I hate it. But I also have to think, we have 9 days of school left. And let's throw out a sports analogy. It is 3rd and 1, and we're on the goal line.
Hail
And-
Mary.
And we're wanting to call a screenplay just so we look good. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what this is. So we score political points.
Oh, please.
So we score political points
I don't need them.
in the community. And it's not popular, and I've been told this is a conservative issue, and you need to vote with conservatives, and this is a liberal issue, and I'm over it. I am frankly over it. We have done a great job in this county, and our administration has done a great job with what we laid onto them. So I'm not going to support the motion, although I wish I could, but with everything that has transpired, we have 9 days left. And so,
Further question?
I'll leave it there. I don't support mask in general, but I think that we have a legal obligation as our general counsel and a medical, as our medical advice has told us. So I'll leave it there, and I think that we have 9 days left, and we need to continue with what we're doing so we can finish this. And on June 1st, when we start Summer Reach, masks will be optional. And when we open in August, they will be optional. And thank God they will be. But let's not call a screenplay or a Hail Mary when it's 3rd and 1 and we're trying to get to the end zone.
Mrs. Robinson.
I've been a big supporter of parent choice the whole time I've been on this board, but I can't help but feel like this isn't really just a decision to make regarding parents' influence. We also have 4,000 employees that tomorrow, if students weren't wearing masks, like they could very well not show up to work because they were told by this board and by this administration that the reopening plan was one thing, and then now we're changing it on them. And so I'd actually like to ask any, whoever, or Dr. Johnson or Dr. Robertson, I mean, have you put any thought into this about how this would impact teachers and staff and their expectations on the last 9 days of school? I mean, I feel like this is much bigger than what just parents think. Please go ahead. Please go right ahead.
No, I'm just saying, we're worried about whether employees are going to come to work. We've already had them do sick outs and none of them got fired. I don't understand this. I don't understand why we're worried about grown adults not showing up to work for children. If this is about the children, the employees should be there to educate the children. That's what we pay them for.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
To tell
I agree
kids
with
they
you on
can't wear a
that,
mask
but that I
so
can't
employees will
control.
show up to work.
But I
That is
can't
insane.
control what a grown adult decides to do.
That is insane.
All I can do, Rhonda, our job is to be responsible for how our decisions impact employees and students.
No, students first. Students first.
Okay, Rhonda,
and
that's
then
really, okay,
employees.
I hear you, and I wish that I could fully agree with you, because I'm not saying that the intention isn't students first, but let's be real here. If you've got employees and you make an operational decision that they don't like, they absolutely can just not come to work, or they can do whatever they, because they have free will.
Yeah,
Just like all of us have free
we've
will.
had schools that have had sick outs, so we've had 20 and 25 teachers not show up for school, and none of them got fired, and they should have. That's not my
And
take-
perhaps
that's not
that
my
is
thing.
something that we should be discussing instead of what we're discussing
Okay.
today. But my point is that
This is about the students. This is not about employees.
I absolutely agree with you that it's about students, and it's about students having an educator that feels comfortable teaching to their student. But more importantly, I actually care about the big picture, which is how do our employees feel if we take away masks today versus 9 days from now? I mean, I'm not asking a question to start an argument. I'm asking the question to be a responsible school board member.
Okay, well, have they not had a chance to be vaccinated? We've offered vaccines how many times?
I agree with you on
Okay,
that.
we've given every
Let me
opportunity
ask
to
my
be vaccinated if they want
let
to
an
be
answer.
vaccinated.
Let an answer come to my question. I have asked the administration this question because they are the boots on the ground, and I would like to know the answer so that perhaps we can also answer your question.
Yeah, I'll be, Ken, I just want to be clear, I don't care what you all decide as far as masks. I've carried it long enough, so just decide. I don't know what our employees would do, because frankly, I found out about it yesterday, just like everybody else, so we hadn't had a chance to poll them, do any of that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, yes, it is about students. I do know that we have pivoted quite a bit this year. This has been a year of a lot of uncertainty. I mean, and we've become more and more aggressive as we've learned more. I mean, you all remember we We went away from the phase tracker because our commitment, we opened the doors on August 12th. Our commitment was to be in school, you know, and whatever it took to stay in school, we wanted to do that. I'm not only a superintendent. I'm going to be excited here in a little while when I get to see my son, just like all of you will be. And I have a third grader in this district that goes to after care that we got to find masks for. I bet I have like worn out masks. We started out with gaiters and then we went to masks and then we just have whatever you can find, pick it up on the floorboard of the car and get on out of here and go in the building, you know. And so I get it. I get all those things. The board has a medical consultant that is, you know, is the medical consultant for the board, Dr. Adams. And so, you know, everybody, superintendents across the country have been looked to as the central point to make medical decisions. I didn't go to school for medicine. And so I defer to expertise. The medical doctor, Dr. Adams, said as recent as a few weeks ago that his recommendation would be that 3 through 12 remain through the end of the calendar year. Obviously, shortly after that, the governor said that, you know, hey, we're going to remove masks by the end of the calendar year. I engage with school leaders. You know, this is what Executive Order 80 says. Let's think about when we want to roll this out. Do we want to look at May 27th? We talked about May 27th. We talked about May 28th. When I talked to school leaders, they said it's much clearer. Say June 1st, that's the end of the year because the Monday's Memorial Day. Like, we talk through all these things to try to figure it out. Frankly, we defer to expertise. When, you know, when the board's medical consultant says that his recommendation is to stay in mask, you know, 3 to 12, and, you know, the board said as a result of the resolution that was passed earlier on, to operate, I'm just trying to operate. I mean, I will tell you, we're just trying to do the best we can in a very tough situation. And I am proud of the way our teachers, our leaders, our staff, and most importantly, our students have responded. Can I say something that's a little bit different than talking about masks? Something that really kept me grounded as this ridiculousness has transpired. Yesterday, Macy Tidmore, at the end of our student advisory conversation, we closed out as our last student advisory for the year, and Macy was asking everybody, you know, just kind of what their plans were. And I got to hear that Macy Tidmore is going to Rhodes. I got to hear that Theo Mallory, another student in our district, is going to NC State, and that Jordan Austin's going to ETSU, and that Taylor Bowles is going to UTK, and that Sophia Perry is going to Howard, and we've got juniors that are going to governor's school, and I got to hear about Jamal, who's going to our incoming student advisory chairperson. That, I mean, I told them, frankly, Sherry, I was like, y'all make me feel like I did nothing. He's got an internship, he's playing football, he's got good grades, he's got, and so I don't, the mask, the medical the medical professionals that the board has referred to or deferred to has said it's the best plan forward. The board can decide to do whatever, and I promise you we're going to carry it out with excellence, just the way we've tried to do. But I really want to spend the next 9 days, whether students are masked or not, talking about students. I just want to talk about the kids. Whether they're in a mask or not, I want to shake hands and fist bump, do something at graduation. I want to see kids come across stage at graduation. I want to see, you know, all the ceremonies and celebrations. And that's what our commitment's been. We've been aggressive in trying to figure out, we're going to do graduation. They'll tell you, you know, I'm a recovering high school principal. And they'll tell you, I said, no, guys, we're going to do prom. Because I've still got some prom pictures, you know, like we're going to do prom. You know, we're going to do promotion ceremonies. We're going to do those things because we recognize that it's important. We don't care about the politics of this. We're just trying to make decisions as best we can with the information that we've been given. So when we defer to the medical consultant of the board, and his statement is to stay 3 through 12, and he refers, he says, and in addition to what I'm recommending, the CDC says, and that's the best that we've got, I don't think I'm smart to go opposite it. Now, I hear you. That's why we announced. I'm glad the governor did announce that, and we're right behind that. We're ready to close it out. So I defer to the board completely in regards to what you all want to do in regards to masks. It bothers me not. But the next 9 days, I really want to focus on children. It's been a long year. We've had tornadoes. We're out of gas right now. It's been a long year. And let's finish some kind of way, but let's finish really celebrating. The celebration, to me, is not about the mask or not. The celebration to me is about what our kids are accomplishing. And that's where my heart is. And so I know that's where you all's heart is. And so that's my hope. That's my prayer, frankly. That's my prayer every night for our school system. I say I don't apologize, but that's my prayer, is that, you know, we just figure out how to do it. So decide on masks, it really doesn't concern me either way. So I don't know what employees are going to say, because we hadn't polled it. We won't poll it. I'm concerned about children.
Thank you.
The last 9 days, because I've been dealing with a whole lot of adults the last 90 something.
I've been thinking for a few days about what I wanted to say here. And guys, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. There's a lot of things that run through my mind when I leave school board meetings and that when I'm in school board meetings that you guys wouldn't like me a whole lot if I verbalized it. You wouldn't. I don't care about a mask. I don't care about folks that are hardcore for it and hardcore against it. I'm going to be brutally honest. On the list of things that I'm worried about every day, whether my 2 third graders and my 5th grader have to put a mask on is about number 10,000. If we vote to not wear masks, I'll be happy as a clam. If we vote to wear masks, little Will and Libby Kay and Luke are going to be told by their dad tomorrow, put your mask on and go to school. And they ain't going to question it. I'm so tired of mask drama. And that's all it is. Surely we're tougher than this. I got parents with not enough to do calling me espousing, because everybody's an expert now. Something else, I've expressed this to a few people. It's comical to me how many people don't mind standing at that podium and telling everybody else how it ought to be and what it ought to look like after their 2 hours of surfing the internet. I won't go so far as to say the conversation is absurd because I love passion, but I will agree with the fact that I'm going to be extremely disappointed when all the folks that are in this room that are passionate about a mask, I won't see or hear from them for my next 3 years on this board. When it comes time to make a real decision that's going to impact children and their futures and families for opportunity, none of these folks are going to be here. I'll mark it down. You ain't going to be here. You're not going to be here. Now, I also want to remind you all, and I've said this numerous times, that I'm about operating with consistency and integrity. And I'm going to remind you that in January, this board passed, and nobody held a gun to your head, passed unanimously a resolution to say, it is not in our purview or in our lane to manage or operate the school system. We hire somebody for that. And it was giddy when it was time to go back to school. And they have had us in school more days. And you want to talk about parental choice and option, parents have had more options for how to get material and how to have their child educated than anybody else. Now, what bothers me is that now, with 8 days, because I'm going to tell you something, before we vote, we're going to do something with this resolution. Because I'm not going to have my integrity put on the line to say, well, that didn't really matter. We'll just wipe our noses with that because we can get 5 votes and do what we want. That's cronyism is what that is. We can line our 5 votes up and we can get what we want. Now, we can have the vote, and I'm going to go either way because I don't care. I don't care. I can't believe I don't care. But before we vote, all of you guys are going to back out of a resolution that you agreed on. And then we'll go back to nobody really knows who's doing what. We're supposed to be governing and not managing, but only when we feel like it.
Can I ask a question, Joe?
Yes, ma'am.
So that means no matter what happens, if, he said he wanted everybody, thought that you keep them running down the hall, they put a pebble in their shoe and they run down the hall, and we'd say, okay, that sounds great, Dr. Johnson, yeah, we can do that.
If
You
he
know,
had, if he,
I mean, I mean, I'm trying to understand, are we never to question anything?
no, ma'am, we are not. But until someone gives you the benefit, or until they give you a reason to not give them the benefit of a doubt, I don't go around questioning people when they've shown me they've done a job. It's the same thing when I worked in the school system, and one of the reasons why I don't work there anymore, when I had to go down 20 years ago and sign a book, just like a kid, to check out of school and go get me a Subway sandwich. I want to be treated like a professional. Give me the benefit of the doubt until I give you a reason not to. I'm speaking for myself. Dr. Johnson has not given me a reason since he's been here for me to doubt his integrity, his character, and his intention. Now, if there's something amongst you all that I don't know about, then maybe that would be evidence to the reason to go, we don't need to follow someone who's led pretty well so far. Now, this has nothing to do with him. It's nothing to do with him. I'm telling you, again, I want to see the level of intensity and passion about what we're doing from here on out on stuff, and I'm going to say it, guys, and you can get as mad as you want, stuff that really matters. Stuff that matters. I'm tired of hearing about filthy masks. They've been filthy for 8 months if they're filthy. Surely we can get through 8 days. Surely we can get through 8 days. Now, again, I don't care. But it's comical to me. It's comical to me.
Well, there's a couple of things, Joe. First of all, we had the COVID task force and we were following all the protocols, then we did away with it. When we did away with it, that changed a lot of things.
Do away with the task force, did away
Well,
with the operational plan.
About the same thing. I mean, that's what they came up with.
Not the same thing.
Well,
but I
okay,
hear what
okay,
you're
we
saying,
did
but it's
away
not
with
the
the
same thing.
phases. We did away with the phases. That changed
Correct.
everything. Okay, we did away with it. Then what? We didn't have any discussions about what would happen from this and that and the other. He's the one who came up and said we'd do away with the mask.
But what I'm saying, Ms. Thurman, I hear what
But I'm
you're saying.
okay, well, why do we even come to board meetings? Why don't we just say, you just do whatever you want, and that is fine
Because we
with
have
us.
duties. We have duties.
Can I?
We have
That's fine
duties.
with us. Well, hey.
We have duties. This ain't one of them. This ain't one of them.
Well, see, you see your bowl differently than I do. I think it's one of mine. Sorry.
It's not one of them.
Well,
So again, I
to me
don't
it is.
care. Listen, let's vote. But what I'm saying is, before we vote, I need to table that, however I need to do that, Mr. Parliamentarian, and say before we do that, we're going to vote on whether or not we're going to continue to follow this resolution or we're going to disband with that. Because we can't in good faith say, number 3 at the bottom of the resolution says the administration of the Hamilton County Schools is authorized and directed to develop a revised operational plan that will emphasize the importance of in-person instruction for all students while taking reasonable and appropriate steps to safeguard the safety of these students, the faculty, and the staff. We place that burden on them. Now, you all want that burden back? I'm good with that. We need to get rid of this. We need to get rid of that. Because if we don't,
I make the motion, I want to vote against the resolution just so I can vote on
that's
that.
fine. Do we have a second?
Okay.
We don't have to. You can still vote. I just want everybody to know that's not working with integrity. Is there a second to get rid of that?
I'll second.
To get rid of that? Okay? Ms. Ford, call for the vote, please.
What are we voting on?
To get rid of this resolution, and then we'll vote on.
It's only 9 days.
Exactly
Vote
right.
for it. That's right, it's only 9 days. You don't get to make
No, it's
decisions
not.
for 9 days.
It's not. It's a matter of integrity.
In your opinion?
It's a matter of integrity. It's a matter of operating with integrity.
Mr. Chairman, so I'm clear, so the Secretary and I are clear. This is a motion to repeal the resolution that authorized the administration to develop a plan to get us back in school.
You agree it's necessary?
So now that puts the burden back on all these folks that know what they're doing.
We have a
They
motion.
know what they're doing.
So I think what the chairman was asking for was a substitute motion, which Ms. Thurman has now made, and it's now been seconded.
Correct.
So we now have a substitute motion to repeal the earlier resolution.
So if this doesn't pass, we can't vote on the mask,
No, you can
correct?
still vote.
Well, then why don't we just vote to begin with? What's the
Because I
difference?
want the world to know that this board's willing to vote and take something that they've already said we're gonna do and operate and give operations to the administration and
Well, that's-
wipe their
that's so-
nose
that's
with
so
it and move
utterly
on.
ridiculous.
Call
I
for the
withdraw my
question.
motion. That's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it
Just
is an
vote.
issue.
It's two different issues,
No, it's not.
in your opinion.
Yes,
No,
John,
it's
your
not.
opinion.
Can I ask the parliamentarians?
Let's just vote. You guys vote it down, we'll move on.
Call for the question.
Go ahead, Ms. Ford.
I
Can I-
withdrew my
clarifying
motion.
question
I'm
real
gonna vote
fast?
on the mask, please. I
She
withdraw my
withdrew her
motion. I'm gonna, if it gets the resolution, because it will never pass, I wanna vote on the mask, see where everybody stands.
That has nothing to do with it.
So
Okay, vote on the mask.
We'll
It
just do
doesn't-
away with the resolution, then we can manage whenever we want.
No, that's okay. We'll vote on the mask.
there's a, all right. There was a motion, there was a second. It then belongs to the board as a whole. She has withdrawn her motion, the second's been withdrawn. It's the pleasure of the chair at this
I'll withdraw
point.
the motion about the withdrawing the resolution.
Right, I understand that. So it's the pleasure of the chair. If it's the pleasure of the chair, you can accept the withdrawal of the motion and the withdrawal of the second, or if it's the pleasure of the chair, you can push forward with the vote, since once made and seconded, the motion belongs to the board.
I thought it was just as simple as making a substitute motion. You have to vote on that before you get to the one that was originally made. We've done it a few times before.
Yeah, so that's the pleasure of the chair then.
That's what I'd like to do. Let's vote on whether
Do
we're
it.
just
Chairman
making a
Wingate.
resolution, yes or no.
Can I ask just a legal? If we do rescind this resolution, Scott, does that put all reopening or legalities back on this board instead of the administration? I just want to clarify that.
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, it's, so, under board policy, and I think it's 1.601, this board has delegated the day-to-day operations to Dr. Johnson. So where the board is silent on any issue, he has the authority to act. Ms. Thurman's original motion was essentially to step into that void. Now, likewise, the board's earlier resolution was basically reinforcing to Dr. Johnson that he has the authority to get us back into school. The chairman makes the point that because of that resolution, Ms. Thurman's current motion is inconsistent. He asked for a substitute motion. Ms. Thurman made it. It was seconded. She's withdrawn her motion in the second, but because it's been made and seconded, it belongs to the board. The chair wants to vote on that. I think I got that right.
So we're voting to away the resolution. That's where we are.
I'm new. I just want to know what I'm voting on, please. I have no idea, but I
You're
appreciate
voting
all
to
your
rescind a
wording.
resolution.
So it's a motion to rescind the resolution that authorized Dr. Johnson to get the system back in school.
Because we're
If
back
you
in
say
school.
yes, if you say yes, you're voting to rescind, do away with
If I
it.
say no, that
away with it.
resolution stays.
That's right. It's
Got
a
it.
totally different.
Totally, it's two different issues.
This won't be the first time this board's gotten sidetracked and tried to handle two different issues at the same time, I promise. you. Go ahead, Ms. Ford.
Dr. Highlander.
May I ask a real quick question to be sure I'm straight on this?
It's a motion to rescind, basically.
Okay, if, to drop the mask mandate, to give parental control, we have to rescind this first.
No.
You
We
don't.
don't?
Not
Nothing
connected,
to do with it.
not connected.
If we don't have to, abstain.
Well, that's what I said. I withdrew
Abstain?
my motion.
Abstain then, if we don't have to do that.
I don't care to vote.
I'm not, there's no reason to.
Mrs. Hill.
No, I do not vote to rescind the motion, the resolution.
Mr. McClendon.
No.
Mr. Perez.
No.
Mrs. Robinson.
No.
Mr. Smith.
Nope.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
No. Now, do we have a motion, or do we have to do it again, Mr. Bennett?
Motion's still on the floor.
So,
Or is it still on the table to go back?
yes, sir.
All right, so now, we have a motion to repeal the mask or make mask optional beginning tomorrow. Is that correct? Did I say that correctly?
That's correct.
Can we clarify, Mr. Chairman? So, in the discussion, I think I heard some discussion that maybe the motion was intended to apply to employees as well. But in the original motion, I have parents and students.
Okay, well, and employees as well.
Okay.
I asked for that clarification. Craig, adults have a choice, workers have a choice, mask or not, in this, and parents have a choice for the student, yes or no?
That's how I read the motion.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure.
Dr. Highlander,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill? No. Mr. McClendon?
No.
Mr. Perez?
No.
Mrs. Robinson?
No.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Chairman Wingate?
No. That brings us to the end of our meeting. Do we have any events, announcements? Obviously, we've got graduations, things of that nature. I'm sure your principals have made you aware of those things.
May I?
Go ahead, Dr. Highlander.
We have Mr. Smith's charitable organization is tomorrow night. If you,
No,
I would not-
Monday.
I mean, it's Monday night. I would not want you to miss any graduation in your district, but I have a table, I have 4 empty seats. If any of you would like to come with a guest and sit at my table, just the first 4 that tell me, it's a table for 8, right, Joe? And so I would love to have any of you come with me as a guest.
I have CSAS's graduation that night,
Okay.
or I would love to go with you, but
Okay.
I will make a donation. I meant to tell you that last week. Or,
If
An
it was,
extra con.
if it was my district, I would not be there, Joe, but my district's not that night. But any if you want to come, feel free to come as my guest.
Ms. Tidmore.
I just wanted to take a moment real quick, since this is my last meeting, to thank everybody.
Been a fun year.
Yes,
I was just laughing at what you've witnessed over the last year. Like, there's no better leadership experience than what you just got over the last year.
oh my gosh, I'm gonna try not to say too much because I'll start crying. But this really has meant a lot to me, to think critically about the issues in our system and how they affect not just me, but everybody around me. And I just want to thank everybody who opened up this room and let me be a part of it in some way, because that does mean a lot. And I am really going to miss it, even though the discussions are sometimes boring or sometimes voices get really loud. It has meant a lot to me, and I'm going to miss it much more than I could ever put into words. So thank you to all of our board members. Thank you to everybody in this room. Thank you to Dr. Johnson, Ms. Ford, who were my direct contacts, who I gave a lot of questions to. Thank you to Ms. Bronson, who is now leading the task force, or it just ended today. But I just want to give my round of goodbyes and thank yous to everybody, because this has been so influential and made me think about how a school board operates in a totally different way. It was easy to come in, or even a year before I came in, before I started watching board meetings, to think that the school board is distant from the schools and to think that the decisions made in this room don't impact us. But you know, as I came in and I realized the validity of what is being discussed and how it affects everybody in this all, is it 44 or 45,000 students in this system? And how passionate everybody in this room is for everybody they know. And so I just wanted to take a moment, thank you, in as many ways as I can say it.
Thank you, Nancy.
Anyone else? All right, meeting adjourned.